Welcome to the August 6th Town Council meeting. Please stand to salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nice to see everybody tonight. First order of business is approval of the minutes, May 21st, 2018. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0, motion passes. June 4th, 2018, the regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0, motion passes. So tonight, the first showcase we have is a group of young ladies in the back, and I'm going to ask them to come up to the podium. Nancy, Christine, and Ellen.
Hey, Nance.
So good evening, ladies, and thank you so much for being here tonight. I did want the town of Narragansett to recognize you, and so we're here tonight to talk about some of the things that you've been up to for maybe the last 5 to 7 years around Narragansett, around the Escape Road and over by Great Island, right? So I just have proclamations for you for your service, and I'm going to read one, but I'll give you each one to take with you tonight. But we just want to thank you for your work and caring about Narragansett so much. So I have a proclamation, so you can come a little bit closer. This is a proclamation for Nancy Crowley, Christine Gadogno, and Ellen Burnett. Say it one more time. Bennett. Whereas our beautiful scenery and clean environment are a source of great pride, attraction to the tourists, and aiding and recruiting new businesses. And whereas trash fouls our waterways as well as our landscape. And whereas life on our planet and the quest for meaning and purpose in life can be threatened by mankind's failure to take charge of the earth. And whereas the efforts of volunteers to beautify our town and help raise awareness of the need for many people to properly dispose of their trash. And whereas Nancy, Christine, and Ellen have kept our roadsides clean by picking up trash all around the town, now therefore it will be resolved by the Narragansett Town Council extends its sincere thanks to Nancy, Christine, and Ellen for doing their part in protecting and enhancing the roadways and encouraging enjoyment of the scenic beauty and the recreational potential in the town of Narragansett. So thank you very much, ladies. Ellen, you too. We appreciate it. Keep up the good work. 5 to 7 years. Excellent. Well deserved, and thank you very much. I actually stand corrected. It's been 20 years of hard work. So again, thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. Second, I just want to recognize Gail from Sunwatt, and I just want to have you, why don't you come on up, Gail? So Sunwatt is the installer company that is here for the Solarize Narragansett that will be working on a campaign up until November, and they will be educating and hopefully installing some solar panels to homes and small businesses. So we're thrilled that Sunwatt is going to be here, and we just want to thank them, and we look forward to the opportunity to have the residents of Narragansett work with such a great project. So thank you for being here, Gail, and if they want to reach out,
People know that we're going to have a.
you got to speak into the mic.
Oh, we're leasing a temporary office in Mariner Square.
Oh, in
So
Mariner
people-
Square.
Yeah, so people can, we found an office there, and we want it to be available to the townspeople. So we'll have a presence in the town pretty much straight through. They want to come by any Solar 101 or whatever. So anyway, we're so happy to be here. Thank you.
And can I just ask you, when is the storefront actually going to be up and running?
Oh, this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if anybody in the town has any question, that's where they should go.
Suite 43.
Perfect. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, we're going to move on to reports. And the first report we have from the town manager is the update on Sprague Bridge in that area. So we'll listen to the town manager.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, I'm going to give two presentations. The first one's on the Sprague Bridge parking area and the progress the staff has made on that project.
You know what? It's so hard to hear with the fan. I don't know. You guys okay with it? Can you hear? Yeah, if we could turn that fan. Wait, Dave, could you shut that off, the one out there? It's hard to hear. Sorry, Jim. I just want the public to be able to hear. I can't hear it, though. Sorry. Good. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, much better.
Once again, thank you. There are two presentations tonight. I'll be brief in both of them, but they need to be addressed. The first one's for the Sprague Bridge parking area. So to give you a historical perspective of this, when I became town manager 2 years ago, this was the first project I was assigned. It was assigned by the council president, Susan Bonanno, who was the pro tem at the time. This was an area of concern regarding public safety because there were so many vehicles there. There were bridge jumpers. There were kids jumping off the bridge into the water. There were commercial operations dropping kayaks off there, a danger to the kids that were walking the area. So this was an area that we, with the staff, we looked at, we studied, we came up with a comprehensive plan of an area that we could improve this, and we started moving forward with it. As with anything else, it took a long time. We didn't think it would take this long. We thought it would be measured in months instead of a couple of years. But we're finally at the point where we can move forward. We have all the permits, approvals, and leases in place. And the last concern that was addressed by a resident here regarding some bicycle safety was addressed July 19th, and now we're ready to move forward. So I'll go over this with you very quickly. I think there's 7 slides, just so we're all on the same wavelength. The first slide that you see up here on this state-of-the-art viewing system we have here, and we're working on getting a new one. This is just a general map that has a total overview of the affected areas of the Sprague Bridge parking area. So where that red dot is right there, that's the south lot I'll refer to. This is the overlook area right here where the old roadway used to run. And right here is the north lot with the big grassy median, which has that big right-of-way that the DOT and the state of Rhode Island owns. The first request we made to the Rhode Island DOT and the state of Rhode Island was that the town of Narragansett gain ownership of this property, that it be deeded to the town with the guarantee that it would be perpetual care and that we would not build on it or charge any fees to park there. The reason that first request was denied was because this roadway right here is a right-of-way, and the state of Rhode Island never gives up a right-of-way on a road. This was the original Route 1 that went over a bridge right here, and then when they rebuilt it, 30 years ago, they moved it over just west of that to build a bridge. So, 40, 50 years from now, they could move it back in the same location and build another bridge if they needed to. But that's not an obstacle that we could not overcome. We have a 10-year lease right now, which is renewable, and we do not foresee anything in the future that would preclude us from getting that renewed. So the first area I'll address tonight is this south lot area right here. Anyone that's lived here long enough or gone on this river long enough has seen this transform from a 20-spot parking area where fly fishermen and kayakers would go into 60 to 80 spots on any given day on a weekend. It is a matter of public safety because there are a lot of young children that walk in and out of those vehicles. There's no designated parking, so there's vehicles parking north, south, east, and west. There are vehicles that are very close to the water's edge right here. That's a very steep embankment right there. And one of the big concerns for the staff was that a vehicle could roll down into that water, causing harm to someone fishing on the bank or cause a natural disaster with a vehicle in the narrow river with gas and oil leaking everywhere. So that's that area right there. The proposed plan, this is it, a close-up. The proposed plan would be to the natural parking area that's there, that's already paved. We would not expand that, except people could park on the grass. We would have decorative boulders in this outline right here and some shrubbery. So that parking area would go from anywhere from 60 to 80 spots on any given hot day to approximately 20 to 24 spots. The other area of concern was this area right here. Because there are no public bathrooms, the hundreds of people that frequent the Narrow River would use this as an area to go to the bathroom, which is very unsanitary and could have long-term effects on that river as far as pollutants. So this right here is a picture of what it would look like on a calm day with not a lot of people around. This was taken last year, but you can see vehicles parked in different directions, pulling out in different directions, parking everywhere, blocking people in, jumping the curbs when they leave. The next spot is the overlook area. This is where the old bridge was and is turned into a destination for people having pictures taken for weddings and so forth. It's a beautiful little park that has the old roadway going right over into the river area. Of the 3 spots that I will discuss tonight, this one has the least amount of worries for the town. We do see people park on the grass there, but a very extreme circumstance. That area is not the area that we were most concerned with, but because there were 3 locations, we knew there would be an overflow of vehicles once we started rearranging parking that would be affected. So once again, we decided to include this in our request through the Rhode Island DOT to become part of the lease for the town of Narragansett, and it was granted. I'll get into the parking restrictions at the end of this so that we're all on the same wavelength and the council could hopefully approve this. This is more liking to what would look like on a hot day. This spot here is the Chafee Preserve, and you can see vehicles pulling in and out all over. Now this vehicle here is the one that concerns me the most because this is what you see. This vehicle right here is someone pulling in and out of the breakdown lane with another vehicle behind it. You could see if there were bicyclists, runners, people walking dogs, whatever, that it would be a major concern. You see vehicles just starting to park in different directions up the road right here. This is the parcel 3. This is the north area, that big grassy area right across from the Chafee Preserve that I was talking about. This used to be the Route 1 roadway. So this parking area right here was the original parking area, once again about the same size as the south lot, had maybe 20, 22 spots. This spot has grown into an area where there could be upwards of 150, 200 vehicles on any given day parked in this entire grass area right here. The proposed plan would be to, once again, put decorative boulders right here to restrict this area to parking only. So let's get to the parking part of this solution. Once again, that's the area that is in question, that parcel 3, the grassy area. So there's many facets to what the proposal is here. We have received permission from the DOT to restrict parking on the grassy area, to place signs and to issue violations when they're violated. So that's the first restriction. The second would be from, and this is the big one, we went July 19th to the State Traffic Commission, which we appeared twice. Many people have seen these parking signs on Boston Neck Road where there's numerous signs that say no parking. Those were put up in the 1980s, and they're really unenforceable right, as they stand right now. Because although the town requested parking bans there, the state never approved it because that's a state road, and there's a 12-foot shoulder there. So that was probably the best kept secret the town had for 30 years. But we do need restricted parking in those breakdown lanes. Several people have approached me that are runners, walk dogs, bicyclists. We had a concern with a member of the public regarding a bicyclist in the breakdown lanes. So we went to the State Traffic Commission, Chief Corrigan and I, and requested that the town be allowed to restrict parking in those breakdown lanes on the east and west side of the roadways from the Dunes Club up to Old Boston Neck Road. And that was granted with these conditions, that it be designated as a bike route, and it be marked. So we're working with the DOT and putting those large painted bicycle signs on the roadway and signage on the sides. So just to recap that, well, I'll point it out in that direction. So that designated bike route would be from the Dunes Club all the way up to Old Boston Neck Road, and vice versa, both sides of the roadway. The Chafee Preserve still could park on that side of the roadway. I know it's a bold step for the town, and parking is at a premium, but I really do think this plan would mitigate a lot of the problems in that area.
So, Jim, thank you. And one of the things I heard when we were up there is that we have to be careful about not being welcoming to our visitors. And I fully support this. I was in favor of it from the onset. I just want to make sure that you work with your staff so that the community outside of Narragansett, the other communities, know that, you know, we're going to limit that, because this has grown. This has been a problem for 3 to 5 years, going all the way up Boston Neck Road. So as you begin to change that area, we do need to let the visitors know that we have alternate spots where they can go and drop, that we're not closing off the waterways to the visitors, but it's just unsafe and there are other opportunities.
So I will reiterate that. All 5 of the council members sitting before me have approached me and did have concerns about Town Narragansett being a welcoming community to visitors. And that's not what this is about. This isn't about restricting parking from people going to the beach, from neighbor complaints. This is definitely a public safety concern. The chief has been out there with me, the staff has been there with me, and I firmly believe if we don't do something there, there will be a major incident at some point. It's some type of major traffic accident, a pedestrian hit, or a bicyclist hit because of the congestion.
Thanks. Any questions from the council?
Jim, thank you for the report. So right now, we got about, what, 100, 150 cars there parking on both sides of the bridge?
85.
I would say on a hot day or a weekend
200.
or a holiday, it could be up to 200.
200, okay. So now the new number is going to be
Approximately 45 to 50.
45, okay. So where are those other 155 people going to go?
So that's a good question, but I think this will self-regulate itself. I mean, parking is a major issue in this town.
Right.
No question. Either
Well,
people are going to not have parking spots and try and space out the time that they come, whether it's earlier in the morning or later in the evening. Right. But I don't have that answer. I don't know where those other 100 vehicles are going to go. They're going to find somewhere to go if they want to come to Narragansett.
Because every year, we keep restricting parking. Welcome to Narragansett, but for God's sakes, don't park here, So, I don't know. I think this council needs to come up with some kind of plan. I know we do have a committee.
We do.
But, right.
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
So, I don't know, I just want to make that point out, that we are a tourist town, and tourists do have vehicles, and they need to park the vehicles, so, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
That's all I have, Madam President.
You have something on the roadways, right? You have another?
I'm sorry?
Do you have something else, update on the road improvement?
Oh, okay, you want me to move on to the road improvement?
Unless you have anything else you want to add.
No, that's it.
Okay.
So the next report that I would like to give is on the road bond, the road improvement. I'll keep this one very brief as well. One of the areas I get the most complaints about is the infrastructure of the town, the roads, and what is the town doing to improve these roads. People are polite, but they're firm. They want to know how are these roads going to be improved and where are we going? I think the biggest fault that the town had at this point, and I will accept responsibility for this, is the communication between the staff and the residents. We are moving forward. We are working hard towards this, but we were not communicating that enough to the residents, letting them know that their roads were in different phases, that we are moving forward, and where this money is. So the first step that I made was to engage the public on our website. So as of 3 weeks ago, we started publishing where the phases were. Steve Dagnall did a great job getting that on the website with Dan Holland. So that's updated every Friday as far as if there were any changes. You're not going to see a lot of changes on the updates, but if there are any changes, they will be done on a weekly basis if need be. Residents will be able to see if the road was permitted or where it is, if their road's even on this list. So that was the first step we made towards communicating with the public. So to give you a historical perspective on this, in 2012, there was a $17 million bond for road improvements. Approximately $7 million was spent. There's about $10 million left to be spent on the roads in 3 phases. Beta Engineering surveyed the roads in Narragansett and tried to rate them from worst to best. The worst roads were put in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It would take several years to get these 3 phases done. So that was another issue, that we have this money, but we are limited in the amount of work we can get done because of the manpower that we have to manage these properties, manage these roads. So what usually happens is you have D'Ambra Construction bid on a 3-year bid to do the roads. Cardi had it before that. And whatever roads were approved and whatever money we took out in bond money, they would then move forward and start rebuilding, repaving these roads. We looked into having an engineering company be the manager of these projects. It was very costly. It was approximately $250,000 to have them manage the projects. We found a much more cost-effective way to do this. We have one retired engineer from DOT who is paid at a part-time rate, and we plan to hire a second. That would cost anywhere from $15,000 to $18,000 a person. It's a seasonal job. They're not tied to anything other than a wage for the town. So for maybe $30,000 to $40,000 a year, depending on the amount of work they do, we could get the same result as if we hired an engineering firm for $250,000. So instead of having one crew, one D'Ambra crew, working on several roads, we can now have 2 D'Ambra crews working at the same time. So the goal would be double the roads in half the time. There are several, I listened to all the complaints. There are several roads that are really in poor shape. There were several in Bonnet Shores area. Watchia Road, I rode down that in the spring. That was in a deplorable shape. What happens if the road gets in such deplorable condition, it has to be totally rebuilt. That's what slows us down. So if we're just milling it and overlaying it, that's easy. But if we have to take it down to the gravel, now we have to do new drains, repack everything, and it's a much more labor-intensive project for these roads. Unfortunately, we've waited so long sometimes that a lot of the roads we do are like that. In addition to the bond, there's about $450,000 a year earmarked in our budget for road improvements, which includes specialty roads. If there's a catastrophic incident where a road is washed away, something like that, we have that money there to rebuild the road. But you don't get a lot done. You don't get a lot for $450,000. But that money is there for sidewalks and roads. So I meet every Friday with the acting DPW director. We're updating the plan on the website, and we're willing to take any questions you might have.
I just have two. One is, I did notice the document, it looks great. People ask all the time about their roads. Is there a timeline with it? Is there I mean, you know, like when, say, you know, what your road's going to be done or possible so that they know the end game or the goal?
So our goal is to have a timeline on there. We don't have it yet. And the reason for that is because every time we put a timeline and we miss it, it's not for a lack of trying. It's just because we're a coastal community, these permits are a nightmare to get. The one we're working on right now is East Shore Road in Great Island. And we thought we were ready to go months ago to start that project, and then we get held up in some basin design, drain basin design that we're working on right now. The good news is it looks like we will start in the fall on that project. So I don't have a timeline yet. Hopefully within months, once Beta Engineering gives us a firmer timeline, we can start putting that on the website.
Jim, where on the website can the residents look specifically so they can see the schedule of roads?
So if you go to the Town Narragansett website and you look on DPW, Department of Public Works, there's a link there for the roads, and there are several spreadsheets.
Thank you.
I just had one more question. I know that the roads are the number one concern that the citizens had. That came out in a survey several years ago. That was the most important thing to the residents. Do you need approval or us to authorize you going to beta? Or is that something you're doing? You want us to nod you? Yes?
I really don't. You've given the staff direction long before I got here. It's clear. We know what to do, and we're working to do it the best way and the most cost-effective way.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Jim. Open forum.
Here we go.
You have 3 minutes. When you come up, please state your name. We do have a public hearing at 8. Karen?
Karen Chabshelowitz, Wanda Street. It really upsets me to have to come before the town council tonight. The topic I want to address is a lack of respect towards the residents of the town who serve on committees such as the Library Board of Trustees, mainly that right now. Comments have been overheard by sitting council members that are very derogatory to the citizens who serve on these boards, and all the citizens that serve on the 7-member Board of Trustees put a lot of time into these committees, do a lot of research, do a lot of background work, and we don't deserve the acrimonious treatment by certain sitting members of the town council and maybe other people that might be interested in running, whether it's in the back. People hear things, even in the supermarket, on the beach, at the Blessing of the Fleet. This is a democracy. Everyone is entitled to speak. But I would ask the town council to consider as a priority the full-time residents who vote in this town, because it's turning into being like an extinct animal. We should be a protected class, the people that vote and that vote you in. Because I hear plenty, and it's freedom of speech. I hear plenty of criticism of the library by people that don't live here full-time, that don't use the library, that other people that own plenty of property that might worry it's going to cost them a little more for all their properties. You know, when you were installed, you had 2 Catholic priests here. And my question is, what would Jesus do? Would he be friendly towards his neighbors and community members? Would he be friendly towards the Jews, the Islams, the Muslims, the other religions? But this business of comments being made in the parking lot, in the super, and it's not only the people that are serving on the
Thank you,
on
Karen.
board. And I would ask you to seriously consider who you're voting for this time, because it's a lot easier
thank
to
you.
destroy than to create. And what creations have you done?
Thank you. It's 8 o'clock. We're going to go to, we'll have to come back to open forum. 8 o'clock, we have a public hearing. A motion to reschedule the public hearing on the application for Mike Vickers to amend Chapter 731, the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Zoning, adding a new planning district section 4.8.4 Boone Street Special District.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. The rescheduled date is for 10/22. This is just a scheduling for Mike Vickers. Any discussion from the council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye. No, aye.
Oh, aye. And you said aye too? 5-0, motion passes. I had my pencil up, thank you. A motion to receive and place on file the recommendation for the planning board. Do I have a Do I have a motion?
Second.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
4-0, motion passes. Motion to schedule a public hearing for the amendment of the urban renewal use plan and zone relief for setback and coverage for Assessor's Plat C, Lot 181-1-A and 81-2-B. Scheduling date. And you have a September, was that September 4th? That's a Tuesday, right?
So moved.
September 4th, do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
No second. Any discussion about the scheduling? Anybody from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0, motion passes. A motion to refer the matter to the planning board for a recommendation. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0, motion passes. A continuation of a public hearing on an amendment to the Chapter 731 in the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett entitled An Ordinance in Relation to Zoning. This is a text revision of Section 18.3, Site Plan Submission and Review. I have a motion to open.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, it's open. There you go. Mr. DeLuca, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam President. This ordinance is a very, very minor adjustment in the text of Section 18.3 of the zoning ordinance. It's intended to expand the range of potential technical assistance that the planning board and the zoning board can request in the case of difficult or complicated projects. Section 18.3 of the zoning ordinance covers several facets of site plan submittals and review that the planning board and zoning board undertake each month and throughout the year. These are the sites that are receiving or requesting site plan, special use permits or zoning variances, and in some cases, combination thereof. The text of paragraph 7, as currently written, specifies that either board may require funds to be escrowed by an applicant for expenditure by the town if there's a necessity for the town to engage a specialist in a particular technical field related to that specific project. This process is often known as peer review. And the way it works is an applicant has submitted numerous documents for their application, a site plan, some narrative, and in many cases things that are more technical such as traffic studies, wetland studies, real estate analyses, et cetera. In 2007, the town council saw fit to put this paragraph into place, giving the boards the authority to request the assistance that I've just mentioned, but it did limit itself to just 4 forms of expertise, that being engineering, planning, design, and architecture. We found over the years, first of all, it has been used quite sporadically, sparsely, I should say. In the years I've been involved, including some years that I was on the planning board itself, and my 13 years working as your planning director, we've only used this 3 times. In each case, it was commercial, although it's not limited to commercial developments. One was a case of one of the commercial developments along Boston Neck Road in Bonnet Shores, and it was a traffic analysis, and the planning board was not real satisfied with the outcome of the traffic analysis. There was, in fact, very sparse review of left-hand turn movements. Now, you don't have to be a technician to know that left-hand turn movements can be some of the most difficult traffic disrupting things that occur in highly congested areas. But recently, on a subdivision that was being reviewed by the planning board, there was a wetland study submitted, and the planning board again was concerned about the scope of the analysis. And yet, because wetland analysis wasn't in that little laundry list that I just read to you, they did not feel comfortable in requiring peer review of the wetland study. So instead of being just a laundry list, it's the proposed language now would read that the board could engage the services of a qualified specialist in any technical field, including but not limited to engineering, planning, design, wetlands, biology, real estate, or architecture. So the including but not limited to leaves the door open. We have had cases where there was a need for a sound study because a particular development was going to create a great deal of noise. We've had other things that are unique. So rather than just expand the laundry list that I call it, we'd like to incorporate that generalized wording. There's practices used throughout the state. My former work in the city of Cranston, we employed it there. I know the city of East Providence employs a similar sort of regulation. I'm sure there are several others in communities around the state. And it ensures to the boards that the technical analysis they'll need will ensure that the treatment and mitigation treatment is optimized to best serve public needs. So with that, I would ask that you give consideration to making this change.
So, Mike, I was going to ask, is this a common practice, the peer review, because I hadn't heard it. So people around the state use that. So when they're in the middle of a decision, they refer to their peer, which would be an engineer or an architect, variety of people to sort of help finish the decision-making? Is that?
Yes, that's true. I actually got an email today from my counterpart in North Smithfield who was asking not only myself but many other planners around the state through an email how they handle the peer review process. So it's quite prevalent. It's even more prevalent in the private sector when a developer is looking to hire a specialist of some sort, a designer or whatever, or doing their due diligence, financial due diligence, that they might hire a second analyst to review the first analyst's work. So it's not just the public sector who does this.
So the applicants in these hearings for zoning and planning many times bring their own experts that they pay for, and then sometimes the abutters who are opposing it do or don't do that. Many times they don't. Sure. And this would give the town the opportunity, if it has questions, to get an expert in one of these fields so they can
Correct.
They can find a viewpoint, because usually the developer is paying for an expert, and the expert is going to be more prone to be for the project. That's the concept behind this.
That's absolutely true, Councilman Mannix, and I think you put it better than I did. It gives the town, it puts the town on an equal footing with the applicant and with the objectors in being able to get the kind of information that they need, in this case the zoning board or the planning board, to be able to effectuate good decision making. We do not make this a common practice. As I've told you, it's been used 3 times in my tenure here, and in each case it was because the expert testimony and or the report that supported the testimony was, for lack of a better term, incomplete. And so they asked questions that they couldn't get answers to.
So just a couple, well, first of all, I'm I'm always in favor of, second opinions and multiple opinions and peer review. It's something that I've experienced forever. So I'm reading the other language, and so if you engage an expert and there's an associated cost, are you suggesting that the town bear that burden for the planning board, or the applicant will bear the additional burden of your experts and their experts?
Yes, in fact, that's what even the current language says, that the
Yeah.
the boards have the authority.
Yeah, I just want that to be clear,
have
'cause
them.
that hasn't changed.
That
You're
is
just
not
adding the
changing.
language that you're allowed to use these experts in these fields.
Yes, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear
Yeah,
on
okay.
that. The current language does require that the applicant escrow the funds for the use by the town
Yep.
to hire the specialist. That practice would stay constant. The only thing that we would be changing here is the range of potential specialists or technical experts that we could hire to assist the boards in making their
Got it.
decisions.
Got it. Thank you.
So, okay, the example of the wetland study, that you weren't getting the answers, so you'd be asking the applicant to hire a second wetland specialist?
Well, the actual practice would be that the applicant would escrow the funding to the town.
Right,
Then the town would hire a second specialist of their choice
right.
and use the money escrowed to the town for the purpose of paying that individual to do the quote-unquote peer review.
Right, so somebody owns a property, they provide a wetland expert. You don't agree with them, so you have the ability to make the applicant get a second expert
It's not
of your
just,
choice.
if I could clarify, it's not a matter of whether the staff or the board members don't agree.
Right,
This provision is in there for cases when they don't feel as though all the questions they've asked have been answered. So they're still uncertain of the outcome of this report, and they've asked all the questions they can ask of the expert. The expert has answered to the best of his ability, presumably, and yet the board is still not satisfied that they've heard the full range of issues addressed.
so wouldn't you just deny the applicant?
That is an alternative that the board could apply.
So
They
basically,
try-
you'd be giving the applicant an option. I said, listen, we're going to deny you, but if you go hire a better expert,
Well, I don't know that the board chairs would approach it in
look at it that
in
way.
that
yeah.
manner.
Yeah.
It could be assumed that could be the outcome, but
Yeah.
I don't see that it needs to be addressed
Well,
that way.
I know things are getting tougher because land is getting, these situations are going to crop up. They're going to be more detailed and more involved. So I understand your reasoning behind it. So, all right, let me think about this one.
But Mike, to clarify, these are areas of expertise that the zoning board believes are outside of our current staff expertise, correct?
Yes.
So it's in the past, how many years you've done this 3 times?
We've done it 3 times that I can recall. I believe one was prior to my employment here, but as you know, I was a board member prior to that.
Right. So this is nothing that you, as a planning board, or Terry, as a planning board, is looking for, but it's a way that, in the case that the zoning board has a question that can't be satisfied to them, that they have the ability then to have the information given to them outside the expertise of our current staff. That's all it is.
Yes, and the regulation as written and in the books right now applies to the both planning board or zoning board.
Yeah, I know, but see, the applicant's already, he bought the property, he's developing the property, he hires an expert, but the town's not getting the answers they need, so they got to hire another expert?
No, I understand where you're coming from on
Yeah.
that, but I think and Matt said it a minute ago. So I can imagine, and I've never served on a planning or zoning board, but I can imagine that being an advisory board and having a gray area matter pop up where you're not an expert, having the ability to use somebody that you feel comfortable with, giving an impartial opinion, to me is would make me feel much better in my decision on the planning board. And not just accepting a developer's opinion or a builder's opinion or, you know, the applicant's opinion, because the applicant wants to do what the applicant wants to do. And sometimes there is a lot of gray, and so I'm 100% comfortable with it, so.
You don't have an average cost what an expert costs, do you? Average.
It's obviously quite variable depending upon the amount of hours that individual has to put in
Right.
and how narrow or broadly focused the question is placed to them from the town board.
Right.
Sometimes it's a very narrow question and it can be answered quickly and in a very short 5 to 10 page report. Other
Right.
times it could be much more extensive.
A short 5 to 10 pages.
Thank you, Mike.
So Terry Fleming's here. He's the chair of our
I was
planning board. Do you
gonna-
want to add anything, Terry?
And I was going to let the public speak in the public hearing, too. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. She asked you to come up.
Please state your name and your address.
Terrence Fleming, 38 Bedford Circle.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the time. Appreciate the commentary. Mr. Moretti, Mr. Mannix, everyone, exactly the case. We're not demeaning or impugning the integrity of the expert witnesses that the applicant brings in. But I think we're not naive enough to think that they're going to hire people that are going to say something that doesn't support their case. When there are gray areas, we do need substantiation. We're 5 lay people. We're not experts. Staff is very good.
Right.
Even sometimes by law, the zoning board can't recognize certain staff testimony as expert testimony. So we do need to have this to protect the town, to protect the individuals. We do not invoke this very often. I only recall 2, one probably before I was on the board that Michael recalls, and we do it very judiciously. And it's going to be with commercial development subdivisions 99% of the time. This last wetland study would have been useful to have, would have helped us all. In fact, we did a traffic study. The traffic engineer that we hired with an RFP that the town hired substantiated the applicant's information, and that made everyone feel better.
Right.
And it wasn't expensive, and it made everyone feel better about the ultimate decision. So
I thi-
we're
I
not
think-
looking to create a conflict, we're
Right.
just looking to substantiate things.
I just feel putting the burden on the applicant isn't fair. I mean, if the town doesn't
I'd
feel
suggest
warm
if
and-
the council wants the budget money for that, we're more than
Well,
happy
I
to
think
stick it in our
that's, you know,
Thank you,
budget.
Terry.
I don't think you will, though,
Thank-
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Thank
that's
you.
what I feel. I mean, I think, you know,
Thank you. I'd like to hear from the public as well. Anybody wishing to speak on the peer review? No one wishing to speak? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing unless the council has anything else to add?
So move.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes.
So I'll move to
to
amend
approve,
Section 18.3 of the zoning ordinances to allow the zoning and planning boards to engage services from the expanded categories of experts
Do I have a
as
second?
reflected.
Second.
Any more discussion from the council? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
no.
4-1, motion passes. A motion to receive and place on file a recommendation from the planning board.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Public hearing to review and approve text and mapping revisions to the Harbor Management Plan 2006. First, we have to open the public hearing.
Move to open the public hearing
Do I have a
on that.
second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public hearings open on the Harbor Management Plan.
Thank you, Madam President. This, as you may recall, the Harbor Management Plan was approved a couple years ago, and it was guided by the Harbor Management Commission. The chair, Harvey Cataldo, is here in the audience, and it was assisted very closely by my staff, Bruce Lofgren from my staff. So I'm going to give way to Bruce so he can give you a brief bit of background, and Harvey is here to answer any questions that you may have.
So Bruce, when you take us through, can you highlight, you're going to highlight just the changes in the document, because there are a few changes in it, correct?
Yes, there are 4 changes that I can briefly go over with you. All right. So as Mike said, the town council did approve the harbor management plan in 2016. After it was approved by the town council, we sent it to federal and state agencies for their reviews and comments. And the Rhode Island DEM, along with the Coastal Resource Management Council, did have some comments. We consider them to be pretty minor and definitely does not take away from the original intent of the plan. The first amendment they requested is that we change our town mooring map. The first time we submitted the town mooring map, it was of the entire town on a 11 by 17 format. And they found it to be a little ineligible because it was all the dots of the moorings were too small and it was over the whole town. So they requested that we break the map into 3 separate maps to allow for easier viewing. The second amendment is CRMC water type maps. These are CRMC maps that CRMC provides, and they're required to be submitted in every harbor management plan for each town. The third amendment is to section 2.4.3. It's mooring and mooring areas. And what they requested was that we correct the number of moorings in each mooring area to have the numbers be equal from the maps into the text. Moorings are, fluid. They change from year to year based on the number of applicants, the size of the boats. So what we did was we bring it up to the snapshot in time of when DEM approved it. The fourth change is section 3.2, water quality. We inserted language that explained that pump-out facilities are not available in Narragansett, but we do not have any pump-out facilities in Narragansett, but they are available in several marinas in South Kingstown, as well as Dutch Harbor in Jamestown. So the Rhode Island DEM just wanted us to further explain where those are and the availability to Narragansett boaters. The fourth amendment was to section Chapter 4 of the plan, as well as the harbor management ordinance. CRMC required us to amend section 82-168 of the ordinance to include the sentence that the town shall ensure that all pump outs, whether land-based or on a vessel, are maintained, accessible, and operational at all times. And again, the town does not have any pump out facilities, but CRMC wanted to put that in as a proactive way to just in case the town were to get pump out facilities, but at this time, I'm not aware of the intention to do that.
So there were 4 changes, and a lot of them seemed like they specified, or they were a little bit clearer on the document. They added language to it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I have a question on the pump out. So I know Narragansett, the town of Narragansett has no pump out facilities that we run, correct?
That's correct.
And on the other side of the pond, South Kingstown, there's some private marinas that offer pump out services.
Correct.
So if somebody wanted to come into town and start a pump out boat to cruise around the mooring fields in the pond, is that something that they could apply to the harbor man? Would they apply to the town? Is that something that's a possibility, or do you not support that?
I believe it's a state permitting process for a pump out facility.
Oh, it is? Okay.
But I think we'd be open to that. They could probably go through the harbor master and the harbor management commission.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions on the harbor management plan or changes or additions?
You're not gonna hire any experts, are you? No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on the harbor management plan? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, I had one thing that I wanted to ask. These all seem relatively simple. Is there any, were there any opposition to any of them at the harbor level? Harvey? I just wanted to see if there was any opposition to any of these changes at the harbor management committee level.
Any
Opposition?
Oh,
Because they all
opposition,
seem
no,
pretty simple. so-
Excuse me.
all these changes?
Harvey, you're going to get sworn in.
Can you please state your name and address?
Harvey Cataldo, East Shore Road, Narragansett.
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and
Tell the
nothing but the
right.
truth?
The other right.
Yes. No, we had no opposition. These changes actually came after you had seen it, after we had closed out, and it came out of water quality. It took us a year and a half to get one page out of DEM, And finally, one of the things we didn't want to do was lock ourselves into being forced to get a pump-out station. You know, if we had the wrong verbiage in there, and then they could say, hey, look, it's in your plan, you got to get it. We're not opposed to getting the pump-out station. There was grant money, a boat, not a station, but there was grant money floating around for a while. We could get them, but the town would have had to put up X amount of dollars, and it was a lot, and then we would have had to hire somebody to run it. So it just wasn't. If somebody private wanted to come along and do it, have at it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Anything? All right, we had a motion to close. We were on a second. All those in favor of closing? Aye.
Aye.
5-0, the public hearing's closed.
So
Do we have a motion to,
I think it's later on the agenda. Is that correct, Mike?
This is just a little tricky because you've got two things happening here. An amendment to the plan, which you can do right now, and then item 20 is an amendment to the ordinance. And so hold on, let me just make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah, it's a
so
first
we'll-
reading. So it is two actions because
We
the
got it.
ordinance is incorporated as an addendum to the plan. So you need to take an action now and then an action
And then
later.
we'll have two readings of the ordinance. So we'll move to amend the plan to reflect these 4 changes.
and I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. A motion for the consent agenda. Oh, I got to go back to I have to go back to open forum. We're all set with the,
Good call.
yeah, we closed. Oh, I have to close this one as well? A motion to close the public hearing.
I think we already did.
Yeah, I
we
thought I did.
Yeah.
you
Okay, moving on to open forum.
Open forum.
You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address when you come forward. Thank you. To the stenographer, thank you.
That's good.
Gloria Roman, Wheatfield.
Gloria, can you pull the mic in a little bit and speak up? There you go.
Gloria Roman, Wheatfield Cove Road, Narragansett. I'm here at this point to talk about the pension issue.
You can't really talk about it because it's on the agenda, so it's open forum. It's anything not on the present agenda tonight.
Okay, so I could speak about it later.
When the motion comes up, yes.
Thank you.
Open forum, 3 minutes on items that aren't presented on the agenda. Come on up. Catherine, is that you?
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. In 1991, my husband and I bought a lot on Earls Court. We built a house, moved in about a year later. Taxes on that house were $1,500. Taxes on that same house are now $5,250. That's a 4.5% increase per year. And we have a problem in this town. We're starting to have a perfect storm, high prices, high taxes. Narragansett used to have a low tax rate. It was a draw to this town. And since we have this problem going on, the diversity of our population is going away, frankly. And I just want you to consider this when further on the agenda you vote to spend even more money. You're squeezing people out of this town between the prices and the taxes, and you really have to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Stanley?
Stan Wojciechowski, Narragansett. After listening to the economics professor, Frankamish, I think he convinced me we got to be a little more careful in our spending plan, or the library spending plan, if you will. And then I heard we have a library building committee. Therefore, I really beg you to utilize this library committee to exercise its duty in investigating 3 choices. I always say we go to 3 choices, evaluate 3 choices to figure out which is most economical and plus other issues. And therefore I say the library could probably go in a senior center, could go in a bungalow, go in a pier. We have 3 places the library could go. And really what I'd like to see is a professional estimate by a civil engineer, building contractor, civil engineer, agreed, qualified to give us a documented number, cost of what it would be in each of these 3 spots. So now we could look at cost as one of the significant items in this library. So that's number 1. Number 2, my wife just told me, Caswell Street flooded in 1954. The water came up to Caswell Street in 1954. Then I read in the paper, Mr. Fugit mentioned by the year 2100, I know that's kind of far, but 2100, he would expect that there may be 7-foot waves coming this way. So there's an indication we may in fact have an environmental issue, not now, but we have somebody qualified to have input that we may be in a future flood zone. And I know I read somewhere where they're continually updating what the flood zones are, but he did make a statement, 2100, 7-foot high coming over. So we ought to consider the environmental impact of making this choice. I hope we would have some professionals tell us what the real story is. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Hi, Fred Bartlett, 51 Fifth Avenue. For about 20-something years, the town of Narragansett has allowed us to run a triathlon in the town. It's always held the first Sunday after Labor Day. It's put on by a race organization called FIRM, Fisk Independent Race Management. I'm kind of like the local coordinator, and I've helped out. This is a private company that gives half of its net profits back to the organization that it's running the triathlon for. They have events throughout the Northeast, and it's one of the largest race organizers in the country. So for the last 23, 25 years, I forget now at this point, we've turned in approximately $200,000 back to the town of Narragansett for parks and recreation, for budgeted items, non-budgeted items for the parks and recreation. So from last year's race, I'm here for Christmas in July. It's a little late, but I have 2 checks for $2,500 each to give to the Parks and Recreation Department. So total of $5,000 is coming back to the town from last year's race. So,
Thank you. You can hand that to the clerk.
So this year's race is September 9th that the council has graciously approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to buy flood insurance.
Anybody else wishing to speak at open forum?
Dave Avedizian, 87 Woodward Avenue. I've lived here since 1985 and on and off, and since Patrick made the comment earlier about the parking, how it's kind of come to Narragansett, but don't park, don't stay, drive through. Even as a resident now, I'm becoming frustrated with parking around town. As a paddleboarder, my son's a surfer. I go to the beach frequently. I live kind of in the pier, but not in one of the streets that has a special sticker that says you can park in the pier. I'm all in favor of the restrictions at Sprague Bridge, but the problem is there's only 40 spots. As a resident of this town, I pay property taxes on my car. All my income tax is paid in this state. I should be able to park anywhere in this town, whether it's Caswell Street, whether it's someplace in Galilee, or whether it's by Sprague Bridge, Castle Road, or Star Drive. But unless I live on one of those streets in the pier area, I can't get one of those stickers that says that I can park in and around the pier area. I was frustrated the other day. I went to get a sandwich at Picnic Basket. Went to go park in the parking lot, couldn't do it. Couldn't park in the street anywhere. Why? Because I don't have a sticker. So I went home and did not park and go get a sandwich that day, driving even the residents out of the town. If I go and I try to park with my paddleboard at Sprague Bridge in the next couple of weeks when all these restrictions take place. Can I go and park on Castle Road? Nope. Can I park on Star Drive? Nope. Where am I supposed to park as a resident of this town? You issue resident parking stickers to people with Florida license plates. The state of Rhode Island does not even consider them a resident of this state. We all know, and there's probably people in this room that have Florida license plates to get resident stickers. And we know why they do it. But as a taxpayer in this town and a property taxpayer on my vehicles, I should be able to park on any street in this town. I went to the beach the other day. It was full. Lots were full. It was a nice day, right? Sunday was a nice day. Could I park anywhere in the pier? Couldn't do it. So I really wish the town council reconsider the resident parking in this town, and I wish that they would look at, if you are a resident in this town, anywhere, whether it's Galilee, Metatuxet, Petasquamsket, or in the pier, you can park at any street in this town. Thank you.
So, David, thank you for your comments about parking, because we hear it all over the town, whether it's in the southern part of Narragansett, the north, they can't get on the beach. The road restriction ordinance book is about this thick, and they differ in every area of the town. The Municipal Parking Committee is looking at a comprehensive sort of way to look at to resolve parking, because it continues to be an issue. And every time we restrict an area, they have to go somewhere. So we have never really fully solved it town-wide, so we're looking to do that. It's going to take some time, and I know it's frustrating because people have parking permits and they can park in certain streets. It's very complicated, so we assure you that this council, and there's a motion tonight to talk about the municipal, which is the manager and the chief, to see with some solutions town-wide, whether it's seasonal or, so I just want you to know, we hear you.
All right, it just irks me that someone with a Florida license plate can park in town, and I pay property tax in this town in the vehicle, and I can't.
Thank you.
Dave,
We're paying attention to it.
Dave, just one thing on that point, Dave. I actually had a conversation on email with Steve Wright about this today. Remember, it's not resident, but it's taxpayer. So if someone is an out-of-state resident, but yet they own property in Narragansett, they can get a pass for their car for the beach.
All right, the sticker says resident. It doesn't say taxpayer, and I'm more of a taxpayer than them because I pay taxes on my car and they
You
don't.
have 3 minutes, Dave.
That's a good point to take
Thank
a look
you.
at, but that's the clarification.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak at open forum? Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
5-0, the motion passes. Moving on to new business. Number 9, a motion to accept the 2 current full-time library employees hired November 2017 and April 2018 into the town of Narragansett pension plan and benefits. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? I'll second that. We had a workshop. We had a discussion last council meeting, and we were asked, some of the council members needed some more information. That was provided, and so everybody has been given that, and that's been public. But Laura, why don't you come on up and just walk us through the new information, and then we'll see if there are any further questions from the council.
So the information that was requested of Nyhart was to come up with what the town contribution and the employee contribution would be for each of, or I'm going to combine the 2 employees. Basically, it comes down to about $250,000 would have to be contributed by the town over the next 20 years for those 2 employees, and the employees would be putting in about $160,000 as their contribution. Now, this may seem a little low in relation to what we pay for pension currently, but new employees, this new employee analysis was done such that the unfunded liability portion of our pension contribution is not included. So this is just the cost of 2 new employees. It's not taking into account the old liability, and that's why it might seem a little lower than what you would anticipate the contribution to be.
So I have a question on, so during the budget process in April,
Yes.
we were presented with the library's request for budgetary dollars.
They put in a request for a budget, yes.
So did we get a request for these 2 new employees to be in our pension at that time?
With their pension, with their budget request, they did have these 2 employees, and they did have the employer and employee contribution already. It's already in their
It's
budget.
already in the budget, and the budget's passed, correct?
We voted on the budget.
Yes, the budget is passed.
Budget's passed.
So the
It's in there.
question I had, it's just a question, and we're focused on the library employees getting added to our pension plan. This is a vote for that specific reason tonight. Other departments came forward and requested the same things, but we didn't pay Nyhart $1,500 to study that. So I'm confused.
No, you're correct. You're correct. It was just a study for the 2 libraries.
So didn't we add other employees this year, this budget year, to the pension?
A budget is a plan, and this would be authorization of that plan.
You know, but my question is, didn't we add other net new people to the pension
No.
plan this budgetary year?
No.
No one?
Nope.
Not one?
To my knowledge.
The police resource officer.
That's right, that guy.
The police resource officer.
So there
was
is
added.
one.
Mhm.
And
But we
that-
didn't do, what he's asking is we
Actually,
didn't
that
do a
was half a
study for that.
person.
No,
That
we
was
did
half a
not.
person.
We did not do a
It
study.
wasn't requested.
Thank you.
But I think the word that you used, Mike, though, was employee, and that's the part that we're still discussing, and that's why we wanted to have the study to understand what the pension would cost versus what it would be for another type of compensation. That's why we asked for this, so we can understand what we'd be voting on.
Laura, was any 457B comparison study by Nyhart?
No.
Okay, well, that's what I requested a couple weeks ago there, to put the,
Well, the 457B would not affect the liability of the town, so that's why
right.
we know that.
I
So-
know, but if that number, if we had that number, I just wanted to look at,
The question Nyhart answered for us is if they were allowed in the town pension
Right.
plan, how would
What
that
would it
affect the
cost? All right.
liability?
And then 0 liability for the town under 457B.
That's correct.
Okay.
Laura, when we spoke about it, you said it had a minimal impact. Do you still feel the same way, that it's a small impact, that the 250?
I asked Nyhart again today, and they said actually adding 2 employees to the overall liability is not a large impact.
It's not a large impact. Thank you.
So and I hate to belabor these questions, but I do want to make sure I understand. So the 457B is similar to a private enterprise 401K. Do we contribute a dime?
Nothing's been determined.
Oh, no, in general, so that doesn't exist in the town just yet?
It does, but the town does not contribute.
So whoever participates in that type of retirement plan, that defined benefit plan, or non-defined benefit plan, there's no contribution from the town taxpayers?
There actually are a couple of employees that have a 457B plan or a deferred compensation plan with the town, and the town council has approved a 16% contribution on their wages into that 457B.
So if these 2, I just want to make sure I understand the math. So if these, let's just say these 2 new employees were offered a 457B, we would then contribute 16% of their salary
Not
to this?
necessarily. That is for employees who are over the age of 60. So it would not apply
So
in
it's all
this
over the
case.
map
So
in
it
town.
would actually have to be determined by the council on what they would like to offer.
Thank you,
Laura,
Laura.
just for our purposes, for clarity, because we're also talking about, the next motion talks about the future, 252 for 2 employees, is it fair for us to say it's 126 for 1, or is that not fair? Just put that in half.
Yeah, their salaries currently are about the same.
Do an average, okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Laura? Thank you, Laura. Any questions from the public, comments? Richard?
This comment
Oh, you
would
need
be
to
the
state your name.
Oh, yeah, Richard Vankermersh.
Address.
This comment would be the same whether it was 2 new library people or 2 new, any staff member. We need fewer people on pensions and OPEB, not more. We refuse to face that fact. We can privatize many of our functions. And let me focus, though, on the real problem. The real problem is the word COLA, cost of living adjustment. You take away the cost of living adjustment, I really don't care what the situation is, whether it's a 457 or this, because it's pretty much the same ballpark. COLAs came about because at one time, 50 years ago, state employees, city employees, town employees made next to nothing. And a COLA, 3% forever, was 3% times not much. It never amounted to much. Now, our public employees are paid the market rate. The COLAs are totally wrong. The state removed COLAs. A number of cities and communities, other towns, have moved to remove COLAs. You refuse. You lack the courage to say, this is a farce. One big reason why is the public employee unions run the state because they run the Democrat Party. And it is absolutely a farce. This must stop. And I'll say on the next motion, every new employee must be a 457 employee, not just 2 new library or more library employees. Every new employee must not get a COLA. We cannot promise this farce. And it is so wrong. Obviously, the Finance Committee former chairman got very frustrated with you people dropping our request to look at COLA with NIHOT. It is criminal what is going on here with COLAs.
Thank you, Richard.
Gloria Roman, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road. To address this motion, a couple of months ago, or weeks, Ms. Lawler stated to the public that the Narragansett, the Maury Lucian's Library is a private
Yeah,
library.
I'm having a little trouble too. Can you?
You can't hear? How about
Yeah.
that?
A little bit louder. I don't know if
Okay.
you can-
A few weeks ago, Ms. Lawler stated to the public that the Maury Lucian's Memorial Library is a private library. We all know that is false. It is a municipal library. Its employees are municipal employees. For over 28 years, employees of the library have been covered by pension and medical benefits from the town. The town pays them. They are town employees. This whole business about trying to claim that they're not, yes, it is not a direct line to Mr. Manny, but it's an indirect line. The same as the school department is an indirect line because they do their own compensation, their own hiring and firing. So this almost sounds like a witch hunt to me. Why some of the town councilors want to bring forward the fact that the library staff are not town employees. They are. You pay them. You govern everything else about them except their compensation, hiring and firing, the same as in other departments of the town. It's just, I don't know. It really does sound like a witch hunt to me and to a lot of other people. We have put out this whole issue, and we've received, the majority of the comments we've received from the Narragansett residents are all positive and in support of the employees of the library receiving pension and health benefits, which are all benefits. Even that 457B, I do believe you have to be town employees. So where does that come from, and how does that fit in? They're town employees when you want them to be, and they're not town employees when you don't want them to be. Some of the comments we received from the Narragansett residents are, it's an unbelievable situation.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you. Nice job. Jesse?
Jesse Pugh, 20 South Trail. So I've been following the library pension issue for a little while. I'm just going to follow up on some of the things that Gloria said as well. So it seems like it should be a fairly straightforward issue, but it has become a little bit complicated and contentious recently, and I think a little bit confusing as well. So I guess the core argument is that, like Gloria said, that library staff are not town employees. So she did mention that they were paid by the town.
She said they were town employees.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the issue being used to argue against the pensions is that they are not town employees, correct?
Correct.
So, so the checks that they receive, those are directly from the library, is that right? No, they're not. They're from the town. Is that right? Okay, so they're from the town. So, are they paid on like a 1099? You know, as a contractor? Because it seems like if they were at a W-2, they would have to be employees. 1099, you know, you could say they're contractors, but a W-2, that basically lawfully says they're employees, and they're being paid by the town. So maybe on their taxes, does it maybe say their employee is the Maury Lugents Library? Is that the case?
This is comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think it does.
We're supposed to take the comment.
So for what I've heard, it says on their taxes, which is a federal document approved by or authorized by the state and federal government, they're considered Narragansett town employees. So, yeah, I mean, I don't see what the argument is to say they're not, unless you just don't want to, you don't want them receiving pensions. So that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a greater degree of autonomy that the library board has over those employees than any other department heads have in town, the way our system works. And the reason this is an issue right now is because there's an anticipated lot more employees going to come on if we are going to throw in the liquor store and keep expanding this project. If it was one here, one there, so the employee issue, everyone can get upset about that piece of it. The issue is, do we want to give away the pensions, right? Do we want to give away the pensions going forward or not? And in this situation, it is a gray area. And so if we're going to be expanding and having many more employees because of the expanded size of the library, then that's why this debate has taken place from my perspective.
So I just want to remind.
I want one quick point too, and maybe Ann could answer this if need be. As far as the difference between the library board and the school committee are elected town officials, correct, Ann? They're elected like the town council. Is the library board elected like the town council, or they're appointed by the town council?
They're appointed.
Just to clarify that as well, because that's one of the reasons that the school committee has such authority over the funds for the school systems is the town of Narragansett votes and puts them in place as elected officials. That's the difference.
So before you speak, I just want to review a little bit of Robert's rules. When you come up to the podium, you speak to the chair. We're not responding back. Normally, if the council wishes to speak back to the people at the podium, they usually have the courtesy of saying, Madam President, can I speak? Because we cannot have, council people and people from the public having these back and forth dialogues. It's a 3-minute commentary. So you come up and you speak for 3 minutes, and then certainly if somebody from the council would like to speak, then they could gesture to the president, may I have a moment to speak, because it's just getting unwieldy. I'm sorry, I just needed to make sure that everybody was on Robert's rules. Here we go.
Okay, my name is Mary Ann Grinchenko. I live
Foddering Farm Road, Narragansett. On Friday, August 3rd, I wrote a letter to the editor of the Narragansett Times about the public workshop that was held on Monday, July 9th, between the Library Board and the Narragansett Town Council. In this letter, I was factual. I did not refer to any specific council members, and I refrained from adding my own personal comments. However, the title of the editorial was "Library Employees Are Facing Discrimination." I have received several email responses to that editorial, 24 to be exact, and these are some of the responses. Mary Ann, I have wondered why, if the state says the library employees are town employees, how can the town council say they are not? It defies logic. Another email. I am shocked regarding poor treatment of our beloved and brilliant library staff by our town council. The library is a space where all citizens of Narragansett can meet in an atmosphere of learning and sharing. Our library is the 6th most visited in the state because of its excellent staff, who are highly qualified and incredibly hardworking. Do they not deserve the security offered by a pension plan? If the council insists on erecting stumbling blocks one after another and making citizens' lives miserable and complicated, how does it expect to have our gratitude? And why does the town council seem so eager to put hurdle after hurdle to prevent the steady progress of an institution as fundamental to our democracy as our free library, that serves every member of the public as no other space in the town of Narragansett? I urge you and I beg you to treat the library with the respect this important institution merits, and to treat its employees with the concern and care that they have earned, so rightfully deserved. Another person said, I want to know what town people are against the library and who is for it. Please send me all the names so I know how to vote in the fall. Another email. There is no difference between the library, the school, the police, and the fire department. They're all town employees. If you do something for one employee, you must do it across the board. You cannot pay their salaries, fund their budgets, and say they are not town employees. You can't have it both ways. If you try, the town will be facing numerous employment lawsuits. I think you're opening an issue that should not have been open, and unless, of course, you're going to treat all town employees equally. This is absurd. Okay, I realize
Thank you very much.
My minutes are up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Stanley, did you speak on the library?
Not on this issue.
Not on this issue, okay.
Stan Wojciechowski again, Narragansett. I guess what I heard is going to cost the town $250,000 for this addition, but as was said, as we expand, I can see $1 million, maybe $2 million as we expand and have many more employees out there. So we're looking at a significant increase in cost. And if we're going to have salary and benefits out there, then there needs to be a direct line to our manager. Who is controlling the benefits and salaries? If we're paying the benefits and salaries, he needs to be the one who negotiates the contract or contracts, such that maybe we get rid of the COLAs, or maybe we do this. I don't know. I don't know what the specifics that he can do. But I count on him to minimize costs in all negotiations with all employees. And so that if we decide to fund this $250,000 issue, then I really expect and hope that you will assign a manager to negotiate all salaries and all benefits for all employees, library and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. Anybody else wishing to speak? Gloria? Gail?
Abigail Shields, Earl's Court. I would just like to put to rest the idea that the new library is going to call for a huge expansion of staff. It is our estimate right now, because of the way the library will be built with sight lines where we can see what's going on, which isn't currently possible, with the inclusion of cameras, that we will need to hire one new full-time person, and that person will be a tech person. Right now, most of the library employees are part-time, so they do not get benefits, and it is the library board policy that part-time includes anyone who works up to 35 hours, not 20 hours as it is in the rest of the town. So we're already saving money by doing that. So keep in mind that it is not going to cost a lot of money for new employees, full-time employees at the new library. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. Anybody else wishing to speak on this motion? Karen?
I lived for 19
You
years
need to
in a
state your
Jesuit,
name and your
Karen
address.
Shabshelowitz, Wanda Street, Narragansett. I lived for 19 years in a Jesuit community as my ex-husband was a college professor at a Jesuit school. I learned a lot from the Jesuits about building community and how people treat each other. Having grown up Jewish, it was really enlightening to see people building things together, building partnerships, building friendships. And this is the point I was trying to make in open forum. When you go into the library, if you need help downloading a manual because you lost your sewing machine manual, the help is there. If you need help registering for something or an application, the help is there. If you don't know how to use a computer, the help is there. And it's there for anyone who wishes to participate, be those tourists that we're always talking about, be those visitors that we're always talking about, but the residents, children, and adults. And the library does many, many things. And shame on you for not backing up this. I totally agree with what Mary Ann Grushenko said. The library is like the heart and soul. It's the community center. The staff all works very hard. And talking about how they're not, we're not elected like the school committee is like comparing apples and oranges and bananas. We're governed by state law. There are checks and balances, and this is the way the law is. And my suggestion is, if you don't like the way it is, and you want to run for town council, to be very transparent in the meet the candidates. We want to know what you all are thinking before you make campaign promises that go nowhere. It's much easier to destroy things like refuse the town budget after you've had an opportunity to participate in the town budget all that time. It's easier to destroy rather than create. And making headlines with this fake news and false news is like not playing well in the community together. And library workers have a very different role. And you can have a smirk on your face as much as you want, but when people go to vote, I hope they remember what you really stand for, and do you stand for the residents?
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else wishing to speak? Paul? This is a pension discussion.
Paul Zonfrillo, 7 Windward
want to
Circle.
be clear on that.
Respect needs to be earned. We heard a lot about respect tonight. And in bringing this pension forward, the library board has shown an extreme lack of respect for the taxpayers of this community. It's only $250,000. Susan, I could not believe that you said that. It's a small impact on the pension. Come on, that
was a report from Laura.
Yeah, but I think you were putting words.
I agree with it, Paul, but go ahead.
You were putting
have the
words.
floor
You were
for
putting
3
words in her
minutes.
mouth and trying her to get to say it's not a lot of money, but it is because we're looking for $400,000 now, right? So respect needs to be earned. Here's the problem with the library, folks. They see everything in town through the prism of the library. Because, you know, when I get woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I say, geez, I wish we had a better library. When I go hit a pothole down the road and knock my front end out, I said, man, if we just had a better library, life would be better. Everything is through this prism of the library, and that's why they sound elitist and arrogant and disrespectful of the taxpayer. So if you want some respect, don't sue the town the day after you get millions of dollars. Don't file a lawsuit, spend tens of thousands of dollars. Answer the question, how much are you spending on the lawyers? Respect has to be earned.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
So I just have a couple of comments, Madam President.
Yes. Thank you.
First thing I'm hoping for is we can talk about the pension plan and whether or not we're going to install these two people. The biggest thing that I'm having a problem with is these people were offered jobs in town based on a certain compensation package that included being added to the pension, number one. Number two, the budget was discussed in April. This came up, it was presented, the budget passed, albeit 3-2, the budget passed. And number three, we had a workshop, I think, on this exact issue. And I believe in that room, comments were made about, okay, it's not going to break the bank, so let's move forward after whatever date and add new employees to a less costly retirement plan. So that's where I'm hung up. I'm hoping we can get to a vote quickly and not have a debate about the library, because there are a lot of different opinions about the library and the facility and whether or not it's public or private, and we could spend the next day and a half talking about it. But this is a personal matter of two new employees that were offered jobs, that accepted jobs based on a certain package. And now, X number of months later, the town of Narragansett is saying, you know what, we changed our mind. So I implore the council to just think about that experience of these people that are going to be dedicated employees of a library, whether or not it's a new library, a big library, a small library, and just realize their experience coming to this town, accepting a job, being excited about participating in the effort, and hearing the rhetoric that the library board is arrogant, that the library itself is, demeaning to others, et cetera, et cetera. It's about these two new people in town being employed. So I hope we can get to a vote in the next few minutes and end the debate about the subjective nature of the library.
Well said. Mike, anybody else from the council wishing to speak?
Except it's a gray area. I mean, so anyone who comes up here and says it's a no-brainer, right, already you should be skeptical of their opinion. 3 solicitors gave us their opinions about this particular issue, and that the library the future library employees were not entitled to the pensions. And so we are sorting through that. We have to make decisions on that. So that's what this is about. But it's anyone, and so that's been my frustration in this whole process. And what I am pointing out in this is the ripple effects of this library deal, and one of which is my concern. Yes, we can get assurances there will only be 1 employee. Library Board of Trustees could change. We could get swept out of office. We could not run again. So that is not, there's nothing in writing, there's no contract that says there's going to be 1 employee in the next 10 years hired. We know what the track record is. We know that we've had a very effective library over the years, and we know that it's a relatively small staff for a small neighborhood library. That's what we know. But this is a gray area that we're trying to sort out and come to a resolution on this and the future with item number 10.
Anybody else from the council wishing to speak?
Okay. I'm not too concerned about the semantics of are they employees, are they not employees. They work in the town of Narragansett. So now we're talking 3 employees going into a pension system that we're just now getting a handle on. And we're just now at 64%. Remember, if we're below 60%, the state steps in and controls our pension system. So I'm on board with the 457B. I think Laura Kenny can get together, and I think the town can probably do some matching. I was under the impression that we did match. So I am going to deny these two employees going into our pension system, and I'm looking for a 457B where the town can contribute some type of matching formula that is beneficial to the town. So that's what I'm looking at.
Anybody else wishing to speak on the council? Jill?
The one question I have is about the 457B. I know that that was a point that we brought up in the workshop, and Mark and Laura are going to look into that. Can someone who is not deemed an employee of the town be put into that system? Or I know that the next motion is asking you to look at alternatives, but we can't do this without the next.
Yes. So the motion is about the two present. The one is 453B is the next one.
Right, yeah, so this one really can't be answered unless we know right? We can't really vote on this, although.
Well, it was my understanding that it was just semantics, and we could put wording together that these employees can be involved in a 457B.
Thank you, Attorney Murray. Is that
I'm
also
no
the
attorney.
That is also our attorney, our solicitor's opinion?
I have not looked into the 47B in any depth. I mean, Laura has been dealing with this, I think, with Lori Kelly
Maybe she can expand.
for a while. I haven't been directed to look into that matter.
Right.
And so I don't have the answer on that.
Well, Laura, do you have that answer? I'm sorry to get you.
Madam President, Laura will get up and answer this, but just to clarify, I have had discussion with Laura about this. The ordinance would have to be changed to allow them. And just to clarify a point before you vote on this, you brought up the liability word versus does the 457 present liability to the town? It presents an obligation to the town, not the liability. A defined pension gives a liability.
Right.
A system such as the 457 is an obligation for the town to contribute.
Right.
Okay, thanks. So I'm just going to give a comment. I think everybody knows where I stand on this issue, but I completely support these employees. This has been the practice of the town. We have taken care of those employees. I consider the library employees of the town, so I support this. I actually can't believe we're changing the rules in the middle of this deal. And the motion that comes next is about for future. But I say the employees that we have now were expected to get those pensions, and I can't believe at this point that we're going to change those livelihoods. I have been impressed every single time I'm in the library with the staff, what they've done for this community, and I can't imagine that we've changed the rules today. It's just kind of odd to me that we've been doing the same kind of business, and for some reason, these two make it different. So, yeah, let's change the rules moving forward. That's usually the premise we go on. I just, it's people's livelihood. I'm extremely disappointed because I can see where the vote's going to go, and I think it's a sad time as far as that goes. So I think we're ready to call it to a vote. All those in favor of the motion to include the two employees into the town pension? Aye. All those opposed?
No.
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 Motion fails, 3-2. Number 10, motion to direct the town solicitor and the finance director to set up and enroll new full-time employees of the library into a 457B type retirement plan in lieu of participating in the town of Narragansett's defined pension plan as of July 1st, 2018.
So
Do I have a
moved.
motion? Second.
Second.
This was the hope. I put this one on as well,
So I
saying
have a question.
moving forward.
I have a question. So when were these employees hired?
One was hired in November of last year and April of this year.
So we just denied them their defined benefit plan, and they were hired before July 1st. Does that mean they don't have a retirement package? That means they don't have a retirement package. So these two brand-new employees are now out of, they don't even have an option to get in the 457B. Wait, I'm not done. So I just want to make sure it's clear that these items, number 1 or number 9, denied them their defined benefit plan. Number 10, because it's dated July 1st, gives them no option for a retirement benefit. So they were offered a job with a defined benefit plan, and now they don't, and we have to change the ordinance to allow them to participate. Is that correct? No, I don't need your response, Kathy. I need Laura Kenyon's response. So Laura, can I have your answer, please?
Catherine, you can't speak through the chamber.
Can I have
You're speaking.
your response, please?
The agenda item number 10 is to refer it back to the solicitor and myself for research. There's a couple of issues that have to be raised. One is the 457B plan that is currently in place in the town is owned by the town under our number, under our federal tax ID number. So I still need some legal guidance as to what has to be changed, if anything, to allow the library employees to be part of that 457B.
So that's for these two employees and all future employees?
All future. And then also would be a recommendation as to what, if any, town contribution, or in that case, library contribution would be for the library employees as well.
Laura, in that motion, I did put 6 to 12 months as far as the research time, because we do want an answer to come back on the options, if what those options would be. So there is a timeline on that as well.
That's fine.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think I have a solution to this dilemma. I move that we start the new employees from the library employees, from October 1st, 2017. All employees hired after that date go into a 457B provided by the town. Do I have a second?
Second.
I will.
Wait, so
Discussion.
So you made a motion on an amendment to this?
Yes, I'm amending this.
you're amending 10 to say
October 1st,
October
2017.
instead of July to October.
2017.
So that will
Backdate.
backdate it for the two employees.
So I have a question. So we have a second, right? So I have a question. This is a question for the solicitor, and you mentioned, and Laura, if you're listening about this, so if we pass a motion to backdate this, or not backdate it, to date their eligibility to October 1st, 2017, do we still have to change the ordinance to allow them to participate in the 457B program?
The motion, as I read it, does not, is not, I believe the ordinance would have to be modified.
So we can, in effect, still date it and then await. This is where I'm confused, because I'm not sure if this change makes a difference, but. I mean, I'm all for it,
Well,
but I
and
mean.
it answers your question that.
No, I know, but I'm not sure it
got a
holds any,
window
I'm
of-
not sure it holds any water, though, that's my point. If we have to change an ordinance to allow these employees to participate, and we're not doing that first, then why does it matter if we change the date?
Well, it's a research opportunity, right? I'm looking at Mark to say, number 10 really says for the finance director and the solicitor to sit down to figure out if there's some other options. And so I think that's important, and it says in 6 to 12 months you'll come back with those options. So I think that will be helpful. I don't know, Mark, I'm looking
No,
for guidance
that's
legally.
correct. There's time to amend the ordinance prior to adopting whatever the recommendations are.
So I think we
I'm
should vote
comfortable
it
with
as it is, and then they'll come back with the recommendations, and then we can see where we are
Okay,
with those.
that's fine.
So
Because
all-
part of the direction, then they will come back to us with the path that we need to do to enroll the future employees in the alternative
That's right.
plan.
And this motion is just to authorize them to sit, to research it, to have some findings, to come back for some options.
Okay.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Number 11, a motion to provide direction to the town manager on the intention of the Pier Marketplace retail space currently occupied by Pier Liquors. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Discussion. And I know that this is something that's been out there. What are we doing? We're buying Pier Liquors. What are we doing with it? Is it included? Is it not? And I know the town manager needs direction. So.
Thank you, Madam President. This agenda item is on because I am seeking direction by the Town Council as we move forward with this library project on what direction we're going as it relates to the Pier Liquor Store. And there's several reasons why I would need this direction. In March of 2018, the Town Council authorized me as the Town Manager to sign a purchase and sale agreement for $2.4 million for the Belmont building and an additional $400,000 for the Pier Liquor Store retail space from the Gilbane Company. We are currently moving forward to close this deal. And speaking to the solicitor, Mr. Davis, it's 150 days to sign it with the possible extension of 30 days to close. So 150 days to close and a 30-day extension if needed to close. That's the correct verbiage. We're coming up to that time. There are several reasons why I'm looking for this direction. Number one, you know, for fairness to the owners of the property, of the liquor establishment, who've been businessmen for 11 years. Another important reason is for the finance end of things. I spoke to Finance Director Laura Kenyon, and we need to put this money that you authorized to purchase out to bond. Right. And with an election coming up and other bonds being put forth by the state of Rhode Island and other municipalities, the most opportune time to put this out to the bond market is prior to the election. We would get the most rate of return. Another important issue is if this was included, if the liquor store retail space was included in the addition to the library square footage, this would open up the town to have additional reimbursement by OLIS, not only for the retail space, but maybe an increased amount for the entire space. And then another concern, and last, is if we start this process now, for example, we have hire an architect, which is one of the near steps that we would be doing. We would have to modify that in the future at probably a substantial cost if we decide to include the liquor store at a later date, whether it was 6 months or a year from now. So I'm respectfully asking the council to provide some direction on over the next couple of months.
So we include it, we get a bigger reimbursement. I'm not just going to include it and then not use it.
No. So yeah, I mean, I think my understanding, going back and reading, and I went back today and read, it was probably, I want to say almost 8 or 9 years ago, one of the first consulting engagements with the library consultant, and all indications from every study that I've read from these experts, and the one that actually did the most recent study for this library has done libraries all over the country. And the indication in all of the documentation says that a library for a town of Narragansett size and scope should be approximately the same square footage as the old Belmont space with the liquor store space. That would put the square footage right at the optimal point. It would also increase our reimbursement to the maximum potential, I think, is the wording that I've read. So there's no gray for me here in this particular topic. I think it's appropriate that we include that space and move forward. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Me as well.
It's me. Get me again?
Yep. You're next.
All right. We're talking $400,000 with a reimbursement of 40% from OLIS at minimum. So we're saving taxpayers $160,000 over the next 20 years at minimum. At maximum, it'd be $200,000. So I'm on board. Believe it or not, ladies.
I mean, this was not part of the original bond. It was not part of the original thought process for this particular site. Again, we're back to the ripple effects of this deal, and they're just, you know, we have to be careful. First of all, the $400,000, if we collect the rent from Pier Liquors over that time, we're going to have money coming in. If Pier Liquors decides to stay, that money would continue to come in from them. if they decide to leave, we'd get another tenant. It's a one-time payment with the OLS reimbursement, money that you're going to get on the $400,000. I think this fundamentally alters the original deal. I mean, this is not, with 5.8 million bond, didn't contemplate this. I also then think if we're going, that space goes to the library and not to Pier Liquors is going to want to go somewhere else. Are we going to put Pier Liquors out of business, which we never told them that was coming 2 years ago in 2016, because we wanted to put a library at the IGA building? I just think on so many levels, it expands the scope of the project. It's going to move, we're going to basically putting a liquor store out of business. And again, I think that it's an example of it's never enough on this project. The library board, it's never enough for them, right? You got what you wanted, and it's never, ever enough. So I'm going to talk to the taxpayers at home, because that's who I'm advocating for here. I'm talking about those people who, over this project as it expands, I've been trying to be a voice of reason on it. So I'm very frustrated that we'd be expanding the project in this way.
Jill?
I really have a few points, but the first one I wanted to start out with, and I thank you, Lori Kelly, for sending me a document over the weekend that I had never seen before. It's from Patience Jackson, who is a library consultant, and it's to the library and dated February 20th of 2018. In the body of the letter, she refers to, I think it was Patrick that talked about the population of the town. No, I'm sorry, it was Mike, the population of the town. Included in that population amount is 8,298 renters, specifically the URI community. To the point that Matt just made about the bond and what the town voted for, I know for a fact that 67%, and I want to remind everybody, I was one of the people that voted for the 5.8 bond. But I know that had this number been out there, that we need to increase the library, not only to the Belmont building, but also to the liquor store to help the URI students, I don't think this town would have voted for it at all. The other part about it is we received an email as well from Mr. Shields detailing the expansion of the Gilbane building and what the uses would be. One of the uses is to increase an area to build out for some type of a cooking, eating area or food preparation area. I don't understand what that is for unless it has something to do with the URI students and wanting them to be there. But look, two more points I want to make. Pat just mentioned the fact that over the 20 years, it would cost about $160,000 with an OLS reimbursement of 40%. But keep in mind, too, that right now the Pier Liquors is bringing in $5,000 a month, and that's one of the reasons that Patrick, you voted for this, for the purchase of the building, because it would bring in $60,000 a year, and over the time of 20 years, that's $1.2 million. So that's a significant amount of money, and that was one of the reasons why you said you could vote it for before. So, for those reasons, and especially, too, the last one that Matt mentioned, ultimately this would be saying that we're going to put, and I believe Pier Liquors is here tonight, we'd be taking them, and I don't know what the time frame is. I mean, I want to ask Jim this question. Should this go through and the purchase be made and incorporated into the bond for the library, how quickly do they need to vacate that premises in order to have this work for the bond? That's the last question I have.
So just a couple of things. I think, Mark, maybe you can answer that. It's a 2-year lease, correct? 2 more years. And again, publicly, we are not looking to put anybody out of business, okay? The option for that liquor license is tied to Pier Liquors. So if we buy it as the town, then that license is in the urban renewal. And so they'll probably have to find another spot in the urban renewal area. That's just my take, but go ahead, Mark, as the attorney.
There is approximately 2 years left on the lease, but I'm going to defer to Jim. He has had some conversations with either Lori or Olis, and there's a factor outside of the lease.
So the lease is good till June of 2020. They're in full transparency to the town council, and I had a meeting with Lori Kelly on Friday. We're going to start meeting every Friday regarding the building of this library. She gave me some information that I informed her I would have to bring to the council at the time of the vote. It's unclear how long, well, the statement that was given to me was that once the plans were submitted to the state for reimbursement, at that point, it would be possible the occupants of the liquor store would have to leave, and not when it was shovel-ready, when the plans were submitted. If the plans were submitted and it took 6 months, it could mean a 6-month period where they would have to leave, and then we would be, the town would be affecting their lease. So I would defer any questions on that to Laurie Kelly. Maybe she can answer. And I guess that came from Olis.
All right, so let me get this timetable squared away here. So we're talking 6 months from today? No, 6 months from when the plans are submitted.
That's right.
Right?
I'll turn that over to Laurie Kelly
Okay.
for the interpretation on that.
All right. Take a look at the calendar.
So we don't have a hard and fast timeline.
Okay.
What we were pointing out is that Olis, who's never dealt with this situation,
Sure.
it would be uneasy to have a rental property being purchased for Olis reimbursement.
Right.
So they suggested, and again, with Olis, it's kind of a back and forth in this situation, that they, when we have the design, when we go to them, cost estimation, there's a bunch of steps coming up. When we hand that to them, they would expect the building to be ready to be renovated.
Right.
So I don't know whether that's, I mean, it would seem like 6 months would be the earliest.
I mean, first of
wanna-
all, we got to hire an architect.
Right.
So that's 6 months there, right?
Well, I don't know, but what I'm saying is, we thought this would have been done first quarter of 2017.
Yep.
And here we are still working on it. So
Right.
it's not something to panic about, I wouldn't think,
Right,
but.
right. So, all right, so if the Peer Liquors, if their lease is up at June 2020, if they left 6 months early, we would just buy out the lease. I mean, you know, we would work with them.
But to
and
Susan's point, where are they going to go?
I think they should go in the old library. And
Oh,
we'll give them
Patrick.
we'll give them a good deal. We
The
got
current library is going to be there until the new one's built. That you can't do that.
Well,
It makes no
I
sense.
think we could fit out a section of that library at 3,000. Right now they're in 3,000 square feet. We can provide another 3,000 square feet, and we'll give them a good lease, give them some build-out costs, and we can transition from Pale Liquors
That
to
makes
the old
no
library.
sense. Now you're going to give more money. You're
Okay,
giving more
so
I'm
build-out
not giving more
costs?
money. I'm just providing a solution to, you know, what the future town is going to look like for the next 50 to 100 years.
Richard, would you like to come?
In the first place, the bond issue is 5.8 million, and whether we spend it on the Peer Liquor or whether we put it into shelves, construction, that isn't going to change a bit. So there's nothing magic that we're going to get reimbursed for this 0.4. It means we don't do 0.4 million of something else. But I did take a trip to the liquor store. I did not enter the second floor because really I did not want to intrude. But that liquor store, to me, looks like the town of Narragansett, long and narrow. And I'm hard-pressed to see anything great coming out of that, even if you tear the walls down, and that is an expensive process. So I think this is a huge error, and let me explain why. As a child, my brother and I used to like to play with tops. I'm sure none of you have. You're all too young to remember what you did with a top, and you pushed it there. And what we've been doing the last few years with the library, as we push, it expands and expands and expands. This is the only top that expands, and it's spinning totally out of control. And it is going to spin on the floor and crash. And this is going to help the ultimate demise of this plant. This is not a good policy at all. Go to the liquor store. If you build on it and it's a public building, you have to put an elevator to the second floor. I don't know what's on the second floor. It's the same long, narrow space, but it ain't functional. It's over the roof of the floor of the library. This is pure madness, and please stop it.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Bob? Again, we're sticking to the motion if we're including Pier Liquors in the library footprint for the reimbursement. So let's stick a little bit to the motion tonight.
Robert Shields, 37 Earls Court. I don't want the town council to misinterpret the sequence of events that happened 2 and 3 years ago. The fact is that the bond question that appeared on the ballot did not specifically mention any location. And in fact, no location had been decided when the bond issue was passed. So it was an open approval that the town received from the voters, that we could look into it, that the library board as well as the town council could look into it. The fact was that we didn't decide, that the library board didn't decide to adopt the Gilbane property, including the Pier Market and the liquor store, until way after the bond issue was approved. So don't be misinformed that we should have known what locations we were going to approve when the bond issue was approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
David Winter, Boone Street. I voted for the library. And this purchase of $400,000, it seems to me it's going to take, the way things are going, what, 1, 2, 3 more years before it actually gets done. And then whoever does the reimbursement is going to come in and they're going to decide exactly how much we're going to get, because all our estimates are going to be based on their set of criteria, which they'll interpret on their own. So I think the $400,000 might be better spent in other things, for example, some improvements on Clark Road. But the other thing that really gets me, it's just incomprehensible, is we're actually thinking of putting this store out of business. This is a great asset to the town. It's one of the biggest business in town. You can't say you're pro-business when you end up firing up at least a dozen full or part-time people. It's certainly not going to be good for the town. And one of the things that's going to be remembered is this might not be a death blow for downtown Narragansett, but it's going to be certainly some kind of strong help in the demise of downtown. And lastly, no matter what anybody says, everybody promoted this on the bond issue. And it might not have been known, but it was assumed by the public that they were going to go into the empty space in Belmont Market. There was no mention of the liquor store at all in any way, shape, or form. And I think, I agree with the Councilwoman Laura here, if they had put that on the bond issue and let us know that the Pier Liquor was going to be included, that thing would have never passed. It would have never passed the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? If you've already spoken on the issue, you can't come back up. Catherine? And this is to include Pier Liquors as part of the library.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. I'm on the fence about that, but I just want, this is a technical question. If we expand the bond to include the Pier Liquor, I mean, the public voted on a $5.8 million bond, right? And so now we're going to add $400,000 to that $5.8 million bond, and that's something different than the public voted on. I just don't know if we can do that. Can we legally? I mean, because what you were talking about was a separate $400,000 bond, right, on the agenda here. They were talking about a separate $400,000 bond. and now we're talking about including it in the 5.
Can I respond to you, Madam President? So,
Yes,
Kathy,
you
so
may.
I don't.
Well-
So first of all, we're not expanding the bond. I think what Richard said was accurate, which is it's an additional $400,000 expenditure, which then means you step on the bubble and you don't get $400,000 of something else. The $5.8 million bond is the maximum amount of money we can borrow to build a new library, period. If the library board wants to build a $20 million library, then they have to go find $15 million on their own. The fact is $5.8 million was approved by the voters, and that's it.
I know, but they were on the agenda. Jim talked
This
about
is just to give, this is just to give, Madam President, this is just to give direction
This is why I'm very
to the
confused
town
about what
manager
we're doing here.
of what we're doing with
Yeah.
that space, right?
Thank you,
What we're
Catherine.
doing, okay.
Thank you. Stanley. Excuse me? I said, come up, Stanley. Yeah, if you haven't spoken on the peer liquors being included in the library or not, option A or B, you can come up. If you've already spoken, you can't return. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, Stan Wojciechowski, Narragansett. I can see the spending clock running here. There's only one way to get rid of that liquor store. You're going to have to pay them $1 million. You know, if you want that thing, you think it's only 400, and you got a timetable problem here. I can see it coming. I can see it coming. So he's going to have to find the space. He's going to have to move up quick. And
Stanley, the motion is, do you want to include the liquor
therefore we
store
can't-
into the library?
well,
Thank you
that's
for the
what
creative solutions, but are you for the
we
motion or
can't-
not?
No, we can't. You know, we can't include it because we've got a problem with expenditures. All right, it's going to cost us $1 million to get out of this contract with him, as he has to move somewhere. He's got to
Thank you.
move somewhere.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
He's
you.
got to move somewhere.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Thanks, Stanley. Gloria? Again, the footprint of buying peer liquors to include in the purchase for the library.
Gloria,
A or B?
Gloria Roman, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road. The library consultant's initial report did include that extra square footage that we needed. She said in the report that it was to be, I don't remember exactly the number, but around 22,000 square feet, where just the marketplace was 18,000 square feet. Also, the marketplace includes the half floor upstairs. So the purchase of the liquor store for the library has nothing to do with that space upstairs. That half floor upstairs was part of the marketplace. So I'd like to clarify that. So we're not adding another thing to this space. That was part of the original. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Karen?
Karen Chabshowitz, 63 Wanda Street. I believe in lifelong learning. Things change. The profession of nursing has changed dramatically from when people first became nurses like Florence Nightingale. Things change with what the libraries do now. Small minds can't think of the big picture. They can't think of the vision. Where's the town been in developing a vision of what they want for the town? I would say they're picking on the library folk, but what are they really doing as far as taking their own analysis as to what's going on in town? There are plenty of places for rent in the Stop and Shop Plaza, in the Pier Village, but you're losing year-round population. So there are people, tourists and other people, that go to the library. There are programs, and they can't just be thrown into the community center because we have professional librarians getting speakers and talking,
Karen,
educating the public.
Stick to the motion.
There's room for improvement, and that's why we need the liquor store.
Thank you.
Because that was originally part of the idea, but you keep throwing smoke screens in us, so the whole process becomes convoluted, rather than you working on a vision together towards improving the town, which includes a free public library, not closing the doors to knowledge.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak? Anybody else wishing to speak? Bruce.
Bruce Andrews, 49 Secluded, Narragansett. I would ask the council to stick with the original footprint. It's a better deal for the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? So the manager has in the motion, A, it does not include Pier Liquors in the library deal, and B, includes it. So I'm going to read the motion with including for B, and then see where we go with the motion. I'd rather be more optimistic. Yeah. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, so the motion is to provide direction to the town manager on the intention of the Pier Marketplace retail space currently occupied by Pier Liquors, and extending the opportunity to have B, which includes the Pier Liquors, in the purchase of the, in the footprint of the library, right? That you have two options. You want us to either decide on option A or B, include or not, correct, town manager?
Yes.
Okay, so I've just read the motion.
If the Pier Liquor owners are here, would you see if they want to ask something, or?
Well, they would have probably come up if they did. I don't want to solicit people to come up.
I couldn't
if
hear
they-
Pat's question.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So,
Can I ask?
well, the motion is,
Yeah.
do we want?
I know what the motion
Yeah,
is,
so
but
like.
could you ask the Pier Liquor owners if they want to
I
address
don't really
this
want
issue?
to do that. I'm not going to.
Absolutely, you can.
Yeah.
If you want to ask that, Pat, go
I
for
mean,
it.
it's their gig that's involved here.
It's an open mic. It's open to the public. I've asked people to come up and speak. I'm not going to call out to people. Anybody who wishes to come forward may come forward for their 3 minutes. Is there anybody wishing to speak tonight on the issue in the Pier Liquors?
No issue, no. All right.
Again, free democracy. If they want to come forward to speak, they can. I'm not going to, Tony, you want to come and speak? Marty, I'm not going to do that. So if you'd like to speak, come on up.
Nobody wants to
Seeing none. All right, Paul.
No, Paul will speak. That wasn't the reaction I was getting.
I don't think they want to come up.
Well, that's obvious to me now.
So it is.
As he's coming up, though, I also think on this motion, we have these two options. There's no supporting details, and I tried to think of myself as I try to cut through and have a simple approach to these issues. And we've been talking about this in executive session, and I articulated my reasons in the executive session. It was 2 springs ago now, my concern when the appraisals came in at different prices and when we had the condo fees that were not getting reined in. And I wanted to move on to a more modest approach and of making our library handicapped accessible and not having as big of a project. That's what I articulate to my colleagues. Obviously, I didn't articulate that to the public until October because we were in the executive session. On this item, I think we need to see, going back to those kind of first simple principles, what is this estimated timeline? I know we can't get a perfect one, but we've got to get something more than, if we're adopting a lease from Pier Liquors for another year, if a year in, middle of 2019, I just would like to see, what would be the dollar value of getting the money of them as a tenant to the town? What's the estimated dollar value on the oldest side? I just think we need to kind of see both sides of this ledger better before we vote on it. That's my opinion.
Paul, we have somebody at the podium.
Paul Zanfrillo, 7 Wynwood Circle. Who is going to bear the cost of the relocation? I'd like to suggest you amend the motion. The
Again,
cost?
it's a comment.
There's going to be a
It's not
buyout.
a back and forth. I have to remind the council, the people come up for comment. We are not getting into a dialogue.
I
with the
apologize, Madam President.
Thank you. Sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
So the problem is, if I own a lease and I have a 20-month lease, the town has to buy me out. There is a cost associated with that. Why would they leave early and build out somewhere else? It's gonna cost us money to break the lease. There's no question about it. It will cost us money. So I would, what's that? I recommend I would like to ask, through you, Madam Chair, is it going to cost us money to break the lease? Do we know that cost? Maybe the solicitor can answer the question.
I'm sure we don't have a cost analysis.
It's very, Madam President, Madam President, listen, we can
don't
split
need to
hairs, listen,
decide
we can,
this tonight.
we can split hairs all day, all night on
not
this.
splitting
It is
hairs.
splitting hairs. So you can do the
No, it's
max,
not.
Madam
It's not
President, you
splitting
can do the
hairs.
maximum calculation.
Yeah.
If they left today, you would lose and buy out the rent from today to the end of their lease. That's the number. So if
No,
you
it's
want the
not.
number, that's
It
the
is
number.
not- it is not the number.
$5,000 times whatever the
No,
number of months are.
it's the money
okay?
we have to
So
pay
I
them
suggest we
to
stick to the
move.
motion
This is
and
the
vote
motion.
and give Jim Manny direction on where we're headed.
Okay.
But it should be added in there that there's going to be a cost incurred by the town, because if you throw somebody out, it's not just the lost revenue. You know this. It's not just the lost revenue. It's the liability to the town for us not to deliver on that. Why would they leave early? You guys are in la-la land. Why would the business leave early, incur moving expenses, and not charge the town back? That's crazy. What's in it for them? They don't care about the library. They care about, rightfully so, you're driving these guys out of business, and you're going to have to compensate them for that. So it's not the $5,000 a month. It's the moving costs. It's all those other, and that's not even being addressed. That should be borne by the library. That should be borne by the bond, whatever that money is, as well. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Paul.
Madam President,
Thank you.
you know, I haven't studied the lease in detail with regard to that matter, but it would it'd be well advised to give consideration to what rights the town has to unilaterally terminate the lease. It is not. There's no formula, to my recollection, in that lease that says the town has the unilateral right to terminate it, and if they do, they simply forego the rent. I think a good suggestion was understanding the timeline, seeing if it runs out close to the termination of the lease, and if it doesn't, looking at what the options are, because I'm fairly certain, I've read the lease several times, not with an eye towards that, but I don't recall seeing a unilateral right to terminate it.
So, because time is of the essence, and I know that the last time you wanted an answer to this, Jim, could we vote on it conditionally and at least give him direction, and then would that be a possibility?
I don't think there's a lot to be gained from doing that. We do have time with regard to the OLIS. Now, you don't have months and months, but I think we have time to digest the lease and the legal ramifications, better understand the timing, I think would be more prudent.
Continue
All right, I got a question. Mark, in most commercial leases, right, say we're 6 months away from his end lease date, and we want him out, we just buy out that 6 months. Is that?
Well, in a commercial lease, there may be a buyout formula.
Right.
I don't recall seeing a buyout formula in this particular
Right,
case,
but
so your
in
idea.
general terms, it's usually you buy out the monthly rate?
No. The buyout formula would be that which the lessee and the lessor agree to.
Right.
The person willing or wanting or desiring to terminate it generally is not the person setting the terms. It's going to be the person who, doesn't want to terminate it is going to drive the terms.
Right.
So I don't recall a buyout provision. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm saying I don't recall it. And there is no generic fallback buyout provision.
Right. But in most cases, there's no relocation fee attacked to the lessor.
Well, I want to speak in just in very general terms. If a party defaults or terminates or breaks their covenant, the right for a lessee to peacefully enjoy or carry on their business, the party breaking the lease would be liable for damages, and relocation may be certainly a damage.
Right. Right. All right. Well,
In light of that, I'm going to move to continue this item for 2 weeks.
Until August 20th? Does he have a second on that?
I
Second.
don't know.
Discussion?
Question is, do we have enough information to make this decision now? Jim, once we, sorry, say we approve the liquor store being part of the package for the bond. Do we still have time to defer to the next meeting to maybe we can get with the liquor store owners and get some kind of dialogue and get some kind of, rules of engagement?
Yes, I believe we have time.
Okay, so I'll second, I'll agree with Matt. Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of continuing until August 20th?
Aye.
5-0.
No.
4-1, motion passes, will be continued until the 20th. Number 12, a motion to approve protect and secure agreement between Kevin and Sarah Monk and the town of Narragansett for the town property located on Plat L, Lot 234, Glenwood Avenue.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Number 13, a motion to approve the access agreement with National Grid for the South County Bike Path Phase 4A, subject to review and final approval of the language by the town solicitor. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Discussion.
Second.
Just happy to move forward. Do you want to say anything on this?
Madam President, I would, if you have any questions, I would defer them to the town engineer, Jeff Cesarini. He's worked out the agreement on this.
I don't have any questions.
Very thorough.
Anybody-
Thank you, Jeff. Very thorough.
I'm good. You guys are good? Anybody from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Number 14. Okay, we're still conducting a meeting. Number 14. A motion to review, discuss, and approve the recommendations by the Park and Rec Department to save and renovate Building 95 Middlebridge Road, known as the Yellow Building, and 95D Middlebridge Road, known as the Marina Building, and the demolition of the 3 cottages, 95A, 95B, and 95C at Middlebridge Road. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second. Discussion. Steve, can you come on up and walk us through the decisions and the governance and the land trust and you, and just so because I remember this being a 6-year project when James Callahan was the president of the council.
Madam President, good evening. So let me give you a quick, brief timeline, and then we can review this. So the town, with the assistance of the Narragansett Land Conservancy Trust, purchased 9.5 acres of the Middlebridge property on September 14, 2012 for $1.4 million, which included the Marina Building, the Yellow Building, 5 cottages, 95A, 95B, 95C, 95F, 95A, which is across the street, and the kayak rental building, the small shed across the street. On October 9th, 2012, Hurricane Sandy hit, damaged the Yellow Building, 95F, and minor damages to cottages 95A, B, and C, and F. The town council back then approved the removal of 95F, cottage 95F, which had a tenant, so that tenant moved out and we removed the 95F. Back in 2013, the council approved 1-year leases with the tenants for 95 cottages, 95A, 95B, and 95C. In 2015, the council decided to initiate month-to-month leases for the 2 remaining tenants, which are presently on the site now, for cottages 95 and 95C. Remember, we also had a rental in the Marina Building, which constantly floods during moon-high tide, so we moved that tenant over to 95B. So those 2 tenants are presently on the property now. January 28, 2015, requests for proposals for the commercial restaurant vendors for the Yellow Building were solicited by the town with no results. So we attempted to rent out and solicit bids for the Yellow Building, which is the old restaurant building, with no results. That was in January 28, 2015. June 20, 2016, the town council received, accepted, and placed on file an updated proposed management plan and put that on file. December 18, 2017, the Town Council received and accepted and placed on file another updated management plan by the Land Conservancy Trust. We were asked to put out on June 30th a request for information and interest to the public for use of any of the buildings on the property, and that was just, again, this past June 30th, 2018, with no results. So I'm here before you today because...
With no results because nobody was interested?
There was no interest.
No one came forward?
So I'm here before you today because we've had this property for 6 years. We have a very limited budget. I can give you the revenue what we're taking in per year, but we need to start putting some money into buildings, and we've recommended what buildings we believe the Land Conservancy Trust, the Parks Department are looking to save, and what buildings we'd like to be able to demolish. So that's what we're looking for you to review and to approve tonight.
So you answered my question. I just wanted to make sure. I know that this is a long time coming. We've had the Middlebridge plan that was finally adopted. I remember when James Callahan was here, we were talking about what are we doing with the cottages, and I wanted to make sure it went to the land trust and there was sort of an agreement on what they wanted to do. In summary, the yellow is kept, maybe for a visitor center. The boathouse is kept, and those 3 cottages are what we're talking about tonight, whether we continue to do month-to-month leasing or we demolish them. Is that really kind of the core of it?
That's correct. And the Marina building, we believe, has the most value because we'd like to be able to see the URI crew utilize that. I mean, it actually is a good fit. They're utilizing Cottage 95C. It really does, it does not fit what they're doing. They can actually move right into the Marina building with some repairs, which is where we think we should start putting some money into the Marina building. And then as time and money see fit, we can start to put money into the yellow building. The cottages, we believe should be demolished and give the existing tenants 6 months to a year.
Steve, not to interrupt, you say we, that's the staff. It went to the land trust, they were okay with it, and then they said, whatever you decide as staff, is that?
That's correct.
Okay, so they're all okay with that then?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm 100% in.
So I'd like to make an amendment to this. Matt and I serve on the Land Trust, and I had a chance. I tried to reach out to Tom today. I couldn't get a hold of him, but I did speak to Terry, who's the vice chair. One important part of this is when you demolish any building that's so close to the water, Coastal Resources then has the authority about rebuilding anything, which is why we've kept the buildings there for 6 years. We didn't want to touch it until we wanted to know what we do with them. So one thing that I would like the council to consider is to give direction for Steve's department to be able to make the necessary repairs in the Marina building. You know, a roof needs to be put on, painting needs to be done, the same with the yellow building. But as far as those 3 cottages go, I'd hate to see us knock them down and not be able to build. Steve mentioned the URI rowing team. You know, they have a temporary structure in the back of Middlebridge. I know that they'd much rather see some type of boat structure back there to be able to house their boats. It's further away from the water. So rather than demolishing and not having Coastal Resources be able to say that we could build, I'd like the council to consider holding off, giving the direction for the staff to be able to make some improvements to the yellow building and to the Marina building, hold off on the cottages until we can find direction from Coastal Resources, and town staff help us with that. It's one of those things.
Thank you. I'm going to stick with your recommendation as the Park and Rec
I can
Director.
answer that tonight if you'd like. I did speak to Jeff Cesarine. We have a good relationship with CRMC. Current buildings are grandfathered in under the flood zone and in the existing building code. So if you put in more than 50% of the existing buildings, then you are up to new building code. So right now, the cottages are worth about $34,000 a piece.
I think we're talking about two different things.
But
That's the code to improve it and put on stilts. What I'm saying is if you lose that footprint, Steve, you can't then use it elsewhere on the property.
Any new use would be under new building codes. We would not be able. We would not.
So
be
we're
able to
talking about two different
we wouldn't
things.
be able to grandfather those existing
So we'd have
footprints.
to say to Coastal Resources, we're willing to take these down if you allow us to put a structure up over here. That's
It's my understanding we would not be able to do that. We would not be able to use those footprints. We'd be under different building codes, new building codes for the structure in the back.
But it's the same, I had a little bit of discussion about this with Jim today, too. It's the same type of discussion we're having now, where we don't want to have the old Dutch Inn come down, because once it's down, you have to be able to have permission to have it go back up, because you're so close to the water. It's the same premise. Until you know what you want to do there, to knock it down could be really, really potentially damaging to the town.
Anybody else on the council?
Yeah, Steve, the yellow bill, all right, when you did your RFP, did you have a price in mind per month?
Well, it sustained serious damage during Hurricane Sandy back in 2012. So we've had people that have restaurant background. We've had people that are from the Narrow River Land Trust, folks that just wanted to turn it into a visitor center. And the game stopper is that as soon as they took a look at what needs to be done for not only interior but exterior, and the investment it would take, plus the septic system, the flooring, the roofing. Well, but for a restaurant, to have a full kitchen restaurant, the septic system would have to be increased. But as a regular visitor center, no, it would not.
How much were you asking per month?
We weren't asking for anything. They'd have to invest in improvement, and then they'd get a possible long-term lease.
Right, for like a certain amount?
It would be well over $100,000.
There was no...
Well over $100,000
Right. Refit that building.
to refit that building, yes.
So, because remember, Pat, too, they're leasing it, so when they would leave, they would not regain it. They couldn't take anything with them in the improvements, so we had no interest.
But basically, the 50% rule, as far as rehabbing those cottages, that's in a calendar year, correct? So you could work on half the building this year, and then the next calendar year, you can do the other 50% or 30%. You can go in steps.
You could piecemeal it, yes.
You could piecemeal it.
Yeah.
That's why I let people know that.
Are you talking about the yellow building?
No, any of those buildings, instead of knocking them down, you can piecemeal and work on them. Because I believe it's 50% in a calendar year. So you could fix the roof and button the outside up. Keep it under that $34, so
Yeah.
it'd be like half of that. So
I just think our dilemma is we're 6 years into it. We don't even have a dime into one building. So we need to focus on, our priorities here.
And the problem is, I agree with Jill that if you knock it down, you're not going to be able to put something there. So, for me, it's a difficult choice. And I think, what's the benefit of knocking?
So let's, for now, Patrick, do the fixes to the two buildings, and then at the motion and the demolition, let's drop off the demolition piece, because I have grave concerns about, I think we could regret knocking this building down.
Well, the benefit is because we're going to need to stop putting money into all of those buildings, and so plus we have tenants in those buildings. We should not, first of all, we should not be in the residential business down there. It's not a good look. I don't want to get into the personnel issues right now, but we should not be in the residential business. Let's leave it like that.
So there's agreement on the yellow, there's an agreement on the boathouse, it's the cottages we're talking about. I'd like to have Tom Rogers come up, because I know he's, all right, go ahead.
Those cottages, the 3 cottages, can they be utilized as for business, like a bake shop?
Well, again, we've done our due diligence. We put out
His
our
motion is to get rid of them.
request for interest. We were going to give them away, practically give them away. There's-
Not one person stepped forward for that, for those either.
Yeah, they don't want those either. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Again, we've been talking about this property for over 6 years. We vetted it out ad nauseum. We've talked to the land trust, it's come back to the council. We went through the timeline, it was a lease, it was a month, it used to be a year. Tom, you're the chair of the land trust. Can you just, I have some notes of the meetings over the last year. I want to make sure we're in step in
Well, let me-
sync with the
let me-
land trust.
Let me take it back a little bit further than that. When I joined in 2014, one of the first things we were talking about is looking at the management plan for Middlebridge, which is a great document, except it didn't answer the question we're trying to answer today. And my view at that time was that we were asking people to make a decision, both land trust and town council, devoid of any kind of information, some real information. It was a very emotional discussion. Everybody had an opinion. I had my opinion. It's been changed because I've learned more, but it wasn't based upon it. So last year, when we talked about this, the thought was that we would look at the management plan and have a management plan from the land trust, which would provide recommendations or a pathway to collect information upon which the town staff and the town council can make a decision. And that's what we did. We recommended that the Yellow Building and the Marina Building be preserved, as we discussed. We also asked that an RFP be put out to see what the cost would be, because as Steve has mentioned, once you hit that 50% threshold, it goes up to elevation 14. Obviously, you're not going to spend that kind of money. The second thing we asked about, because I'd heard a lot of people say, well, you know, if we could put a bake shop in there or an architectural firm or someone who wants to build model boats or something, fine. I talked to people that I know in the nonprofit world. We sent out emails to everybody we could think of, to include the chambers, the newspapers, everything required by law, but also in addition to that. No response of any interest at all to be able to use those buildings. The only response we got back was that they're not making a response, but they would like to go ahead and help us build a covered pavilion for future environmental education issues. There's no interest in those buildings. So what we did in the land trust, when you all approved the management plan back in December, was to approve, I guess, the recommendation for the Yellow Building and the Marina Building to go forward with the collection of information about what it would cost to rehabilitate, what it would, if any kind of interest, totally consistent with what the management plan is. What Steve's recommendation is totally consistent with what we had, because at that point of time, we could not make a decision whether we should tear down those buildings or not, because we didn't have the data. That's the whole idea.
So,
if you, in fact, go through the information, collect the information, and then you have town staff can rely upon that information upon which to make a decision about a recommendation for you.
so we do have the information on what it would cost to rehabilitate the buildings, because that was all set.
I think so.
We do. We have it. I have it right here, 30 to 40,000 per house.
Okay.
So we went through the exercise
Right.
that we have been
Internally.
talking about.
Right.
So it's
Right.
fair to say that you agree with the motion that the Park and Rec Director has on tonight? Okay.
I
So
do,
that's what
yes.
okay, then I just wanted to make sure we had the information that we've been talking about. We got it in front of us. We have it in the land trust stuff.
Well.
And it seems like there's a lot of agreement from the land trust and the Park and Rec Director. So anybody
Right.
else from the council, I just
What you saw today was a result of the recommendations that we studied at great length last fall. We had 5 meetings, 3 special meetings, public meetings, talking with different interest groups. We reached out everybody we could think of who had an interest in Middlebridge. I learned a lot. It was great meetings. And now that information was given to Steve. Steve has done his work with other people in the town staff, and they're making a recommendation to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for all your work on the land trust as well. Anybody else on the council need any clarification? Okay, the motion.
Steve, we can sit down, it's once a year, so, I mean, we lease out, the only thing I can come up with those 3 buildings, I hate to see them being destroyed, and we're not gonna get them back. Maybe we can turn them into cabanas, we rent cabanas down there at the beach. Maybe we're gonna have river cabanas, cut the buildings, I don't know, it may sound crazy, but, I think somebody with a canoe would put their fishing poles in there and towel and beach chairs and, did anybody, you ever try a cabana option? I don't know. Just spitballing.
So this is a motion, and it's got 3 different buildings, so I think maybe I'll take each separate one, because I'm not sure we're going to get full passage on the full motion.
All right, wait a
Anybody
minute.
from the public?
I want to make sure I got these buildings
Yeah, I'll
right.
break it, I'll do building by building to get approval, okay?
No, I think
Are
she's
you going to
gonna do
be
it.
tearing down the building where the URI crew people?
Can't hear you, Mary.
What are you going to do with the building that's the URI crew people? Are you going to renovate that?
Mary, we're talking about what, particular buildings there now, the yellow one, the
yellow
boat building, and the 3 cottages.
Well,
That's the
I was saying,
motion.
why doesn't URI help us out and pay some money to fix that up?
Oh,
They
well,
got
that might
plenty
be
of
an
money.
idea, but anything
That's what
more?
I don't want to close off, those options. That's why I'm saying I don't want to
Let them
regret
help pay-
knocking them
help pay
down.
for
Right.
renovations.
Exactly.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? So do you want to go building by building to do it that
Building
way?
by building.
Okay, so a motion to review, discuss, and approve the recommendations of the Park and Rec Director to save and renovate Building 95, Middlebridge Road, known as the Yellow Building. So we're
So
going to
moved.
we're going to save that. And that, we have a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, the Yellow Building. I'm breaking the motion apart. And now we're looking at 95D,
Also,
Middlebridge Road. No, that was the Yellow Building, sorry. We have to do the
Save and renovate
Sa-
95D.
save and renovate 95D, which is the boathouse.
Marina, yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
So 5-0, we want to save that. Now we're to the demolition of the 3 cottages.
So moved.
Do I have a second? I'll second that. All those in favor of the demolition of the cottages?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
No.
3-2, motion passes to keep the cottages standing. Okay. 15.
Can we?
Say it again? Okay, motion 15.
Yeah,
A motion to, I'm going.
All right, well, can I?
We're in the middle of me reading a
All
motion.
right, whatever.
Number 15, a motion to approve the purchase of 1 new ABI Force Infield groomer for the Parks and Rec Department from ABI Attachments, Inc., in the amount of $21,646. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Oh, second.
Discussion. Anybody have anything to ask Steve?
No, looks good.
Anybody from the public?
Can I drive that when I retire, Steve?
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 16, motion to approve the contract with the University of Rhode Island Graduate School of Oceanography for shoreline mapping and analysis services for the Scarborough wastewater treatment facilities in the amount of $25,392.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Anybody from the public? Seeing none, all
Can
those...
I ask one? I'm sorry. Jeff, I just want to make sure that this is a little different than a lot of our ones that are about the sea level rise. Just make sure we're not giving away any autonomy to any other entity. I went through it, but it's URIs involved helping us out, but am I just being paranoid?
Yeah,
No.
what we're actually trying to do is both supplement the design of improvements to the groin. We know that it needs to be reconstructed at some point in the fairly near future. URI can provide us with some valuable survey tool and background information on that, but we're also looking to position ourselves for what we believe is going to be the next round of grant funding for shoreline asset protection. The governor's office has released a report called Resilient Roadie, where it talks about the need for shoreline communities to protect and upgrade their critical infrastructure. And actually, our Scarborough treatment plant was mentioned in there as being the first project in the state to build a seawall, and we built that wall last year, including additional elevation for sea level rise. Now, to help protect the wall and to help protect the rest of the shoreline, we need to rebuild the groin. We're pretty confident in the fact that the next round of funding that will come out, probably this winter or next spring, will be for additional shovel-ready shoreline resiliency projects. And one of the key components is to basically prove what you have versus what may have existed in the past. So the survey work that's going to be done by URI will compare old data to new data, determine whether or not there has been any damage to the groin. We know intuitively there has been, Matt, but we're trying to quantify that. That will get us the points that we would need to qualify for the next round of funding.
So it's helping. There's nothing, it's still we're not giving, that was just, it was a little
Right.
different than a lot of your other motions, so okay.
Yeah,
They're just helping us out as with their expertise.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Anybody from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 17, a motion to approve the purchase of one Ford Interceptor utility SUV from Colonial Municipal Group in the amount of $28,656.15. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion from the public. Stanley?
Stan Wojciechowski, Narragansett. I know I haven't spoken for a while on vehicles. That's why I wanted to reiterate the idea that maybe we should put more miles, especially with the SUVs. You know, I think they're good for 300,000 or 400,000 miles. Maybe the cars are only good for 100, 150. But when you get into the big ones, I don't know which one this is replacing, but I'm hoping that we're planning to expect our SUVs or trucks or large vehicles to go 300,000 miles. So I wonder what we're replacing. What is the mileage on a car or truck we're replacing? Do we know that? Does that seem that it's in line?
It's been a while, Stanley, huh? Since I've had to address this with you. So the rule of thumb is with an emergency vehicle, whether it's a fire vehicle or a police vehicle, you see the miles, you multiply that times 3 because they idle so much. So if you see a vehicle with 100,000 miles, it's really like 300,000 miles because they're always idling. The hours on them are 3 times the amount of a normal vehicle. So, but I do have the mileage here. So one of the vehicles is that it's replacing has 105,000 miles. It's in tough shape, that one. But there's another one with 152,000 miles, and another one with 101,000 miles. I scrutinize these vehicles with the chief, as with every other department. These vehicles do need to be replaced. I'm watching it. I assure you that.
Let's try to go to the 200,000 miles.
You can, like the cruiser you drive, Stanley. That thing's old. You know, it's 20-something.
281,000 miles.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 18, a motion to approve the purchase of one new Ford sedan PIAWD police cruiser for $25,687.80 and one new F550 crew cab 4x4 for $33,855.65 from MHQ Municipal Vehicles. The total of $59,543.45. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second. Discussion. Discussion from the public. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 19, a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept a resolution amending the official list of parking restrictions and regulations in the town of Narragansett in accordance with the Narragansett Code of Ordinances, Major Arnold Road, and Captain Freebody Road.
So move.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I had a question. I see it's both sides where there's no parking. Here we go again, restricting parking. So, yeah, I guess. I mean, I know that's a narrow road over there, kind of, but, I mean, what do you think, guys? I mean, you know, I mean,
listen, to what David Avedisian said, we continue to keep restricting, and then it's like, what else are we doing? We're not solving it.
yeah, and then people park on their lawns, and everybody gets mad because somebody's parking on the lawn. So, you know, unless,
And I know some people that signed a petition, and then they changed their mind. And again, once they see us restricting a road, then another group comes forward and says, can we restrict that? We saw it 6 or 8 years ago, Scarborough Hills, you know, Narragansett Avenue. At some point, you'll see it, the motion down the road is to really study it more comprehensively, because, again, I can't support this restriction tonight
well,
because...
let's just do one side of the street.
No, I mean, it's
we
10 to
amend it?
5 during the school year, or during the year. It's not really a seasonal thing, it's during the school year. So
Right.
I can't support it, but...
Anybody up for one side? I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, it's not my neighbor, I don't know the issue, but
Well, the chief
again,
made the recommendation, so, yeah, I'd like you to,
sure,
please.
please.
I'd like to hear from Chief Corey. Yeah.
Yeah, Where did the recommendation come from, Chief?
The facts and travel on this, back in the spring, a letter was sent to the town council from some of the residents from that plat. It's a couple emails were sent to me. I examined it. What they're complaining about is similar party issues during the school year at Eastwood Look, has Briggs Farm, Village Point, Judith. So I reviewed my record management system, spoke to some of my officers in the night shift, and they are having that kind of activity. So my recommendation that I brought to the parking committee was to give them the same restriction that Eastwood Look has, which is 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. restrict both sides of the road, and it helps with the parties. It's worked in the other neighborhoods, so we're trying to provide it for this neighborhood.
Thank you. So the motion on the floor is to restrict it on both sides on those two streets. Anybody from the public?
Hi, thank you.
You
Jeff
have to
Mitchell.
state your name.
Yep, Jeff Mitchell, Major Arnold Road. So basically, the situation is a problem, starting in September, which I dread, to May. Starts up about 11 o'clock at night. Both sides of the road fill up with cars as the parties start to get going. And it gets to the point where I've come home late and I can't even get into my own driveway because there's so many cars, and they actually will park and block the entrances to the driveways the whole way down. My area right around me, there were 4 houses that all received orange stickers because of the number of parties that were going on. And that's kind of an annual thing. I've been there 11 years, and it's pretty much the same thing every year. Some nights, if you actually tried to get a fire truck down, I don't know how you would, with the cars parked on both sides of the street with no way to get through there. My SUV barely makes it through. And then at about 3 in the morning, you end up with everybody going back to the car as the parties are breaking up, and all the horns blowing, the yelling, the car doors slamming, and you wake up with that again. It is a nightmare, and it's been that way every September. It starts up, and I dread that time of the year, and it lasts all the way until May. And this would alleviate that problem. It would also take care of a lot of the broken bottles and other things that you end up finding in your driveway as everybody's walking back to their cars. It would alleviate the problem in a big way. It's only at night, doesn't affect during the summertime, and doesn't affect people during the day, as far as parking on either side of the street or both sides at the same time.
Right. Well, during the summer, do you have people parking on the street?
The summer, it's not as big of a problem. I mean, the summer you don't have it, and people park normally. They kind of respect everybody else's space and figure it out. With the students, it's just a free-for-all. Like this past September, I had cars blocking both of my driveways. I couldn't get out. And now you're going into a house where there's 100 kids, and you're trying to find who owns this car so you can actually get out of your driveway.
Well, if there's no parking on both sides during the summer, you think that's going to be a...
But it wouldn't be the summertime. This is only September to May.
All right. Oh, all right. All right.
And in the summertime, there is no issue. It's only, it's a student issue at night after 10 o'clock.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So the only comment I have is
Memorial Day. Okay.
I'm absolutely in support of it in a residential neighborhood, simply because we have a noise ordinance from 11 to 7 in town, right, Chief? 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., right? So now this is kind of aligning with that. And if this were, and I completely empathize with you, David, and I live in the pier, and it's maddening at times to even try and get around, right? So I understand that. But this is a residential neighborhood. The fact that you want to get in your driveway between 10:30 p.m. and 5 a.m. or whatever the time is, I would be out of my mind. So I am 100% in support. And I understand we have a bigger issue in town, but this needs to be addressed. I think it's appropriate. So,
very appreciated. Thank you.
Steve?
Sorry.
Steve Ferrandi, 44 Sylvan Road. Thank you, council members. I wholeheartedly agree with this. From someone from Eastwood Look, we've been dealing with this for a long time. I will say it's a shame that we have another neighborhood that we have to do this in because of this whole student rental issue, which I know we've been kind of, it's working its way through now. One of the reasons could be that now, because of the 4 unrelated, now we're basically unprotected now. We're back into the no man's land where we can't even enforce anything. I know our solicitor said that it's almost guaranteed if Providence, wins their case, that it would help us with our unrelated issue. But this is just this is like the Band-Aid approach to it. It does work. It's just a shame that we have to have another neighborhood that has to be put through hell every winter. So I would recommend, if the town really wants to be proactive, to continue this and to look into other ways. If Providence does win the 3 unrelated case, then what are we doing right now to craft an ordinance that is similar to that, or lets our 4 unrelated, how does it pertain to it? You know, we were told by Assistant Solicitor Berg that we're almost guaranteed we're all set. Well, I don't know what an almost guarantee would be. I can almost guarantee that this is going to help them, but it's not going to help the Uber drivers driving in and out of the neighborhood all the time, which we all see. So I agree with it, and I think it's going to help relief for someone that has to deal with this, but I think the town on a much higher level needs to address this, which I know they're trying, but, you know, we weren't that happy when we heard that it was going to be defended, and now we found out it really wasn't defended correctly, and the 4 unrelated.
You're talking about the street, Steve? You're talking about, oh.
No, this is just
the motion is
all right, that's
parking
fine.
restrictions.
I agree with them. I just want to say
Thank
it's part of a larger issue is what I'm trying to get at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Botari, 15 Captain Free Body Road. And I just briefly want to totally support and reinforce what Jeff Mitchell had said about what goes on in the neighborhood. We see it on the Captain Free Body as well. There are times, even when there were cars dropped off, parked on both sides of the road, and they're there for the entire weekend, where people, they've carpooled and gone off. So we're left with trying to make it through the road, and it is really a safety issue. Many times, you could just barely get by through the center of the road. I don't know how, as Jeff said, a fire engine could get by. You know, hopefully that never happens, but in fact, 2 years ago, a house on Captain Free Body on the corner burned to the ground. So that does happen. So just, it is a very bad situation, and I would ask that you support this, because this won't solve the entire issue, but it would be a step in the right direction and would alleviate a lot of what goes on in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Lauren McConnell, 18 Major Arnold Road. We also have a circular driveway, so 2 driveways, which we often cannot get out of, just like the Mitchells, with cars parked. If you go down Major Arnold Road, these are small lots with many, many driveways on each side of the road. The rental houses are providing enough off-street parking for the number of tenants they are allowed to rent to. So there really is no need for there to be any excess cars that are there are excess cars. It's a partying situation. And we're just asking for some small relief so that we can live in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? I wish it were one side, but for me, I'm just thinking that we
No,
really.
both sides. Let's do
I
it,
know,
man.
I
Let's
know.
do
All
it.
those in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
those
Aye.
opposed? Nay. 4-1, motion passes. 20, a motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment, Chapter 82 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Waterways, specifically and updated of Article 3, Boats, and Article 4, Coastal Waters and Harbor Areas. Introduce, read, pass, and accept. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Discussion. Anybody from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Number 21, a motion to instruct Municipal Parking Committee to review and recommend improvements for seasonal and student rental parking issues. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I put this on, again, we just voted on, we keep restricting, and then there's another problem, and then we fix that, and then there's another problem. We need to have the municipal parking group look at a comprehensive way to solve it across the town. And every time we do it, it's like a copycat. Next month, somebody else will come. So I hope you'll support this. This is a long-term goal for them to look at, you know, the streets in the north end, go in the middle of the town, southern part, and look at how we can improve the parking and really correct it, as opposed to just restricting it, and then the cars move in other places in the town. So with that,
Can I ask, so I just have a quick question. So this municipal parking committee, is this different than the committee that was formed specifically a couple of years ago?
Ad hoc.
It is
It's
different,
different.
right? So this
Yeah,
is
this
a
is the
standing
town.
municipal parking committee?
Yeah.
And it consists of some
Jimmy,
staff
the
and some of the
chief,
police department?
and
Okay.
yeah. It's a municipal parking
So
committee.
so my question really is, there are experts on this committee?
Yes,
Okay.
DPW's on it, so they can really take some time, and it might take 6 months to a year and a half to really
Got it.
go through the books this thick. Stanley?
Councilman Moretti, you actually, that was a question, you know. These ad hoc committees, us citizens are not qualified.
It's
We are
not an ad hoc. We
qualified
said
to
it's
do
a
it.
municipal board.
So this
a
is,
group.
so you're not going
The
to have a
town
bunch of
manager,
ad
the
hoc,
chief of police.
unqualified people in there, right? So we're going
It's
to have the
town
experts on this
staff,
thing.
yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Motion passes. 22, a motion to discuss follow-up by the town solicitor, town manager, and town council regarding the request for July 17, 2017, of changing language for disorderly conduct offenses to include drunken behavior. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. This was put on by Jill.
So I put this on because Mr. Dentler, who is here tonight, rightly so, came to our last meeting and pointed out to us that we had opened up a topic a year ago, and we had never closed the loop on it and given an answer. So apologies for that, Mr. Dentler. A few days after that, I did meet with Mr. Dentler and Jim on this subject, and I want to turn this over to Jim so he can give the interpretation of the Rhode Island law and Narragansett law.
Thank you, Councilwoman Lawler. You are correct. On July 17, 2017, a discussion, I was directed to research possibly changing the disorderly conduct law for the town of Narragansett. We did have a discussion on that right away with the chief. We came to a conclusion, but we did fail to come back and relay that to the resident, Mr. Dentler, who's in the audience tonight. So I apologize, too, for not getting back to everyone involved. But we did meet with them. And I'll go over the reasoning why we decided not to change it, and hopefully you will agree with that decision. So under Rhode Island General Law 1145-1 is disorderly conduct. The section for the town of Narragansett, which has a municipal law ordinance, is section 46-3, disorderly conduct. The Narragansett law really mirrors the state law. And that state law has some very strong language and is a very utilized law by police officers in the state. So what is the definition of disorderly conduct? The definition of disorderly conduct is unruly behavior which constitutes a minor offense. And prior to a disorderly conduct law, there were laws on the books called disturbing the peace, public intoxication, urinating in public, all kind of laws like that. Those were all lumped into one law called disorderly conduct. So so the question came up a year ago, should we have an ordinance that states drunken disorderly? All right, so in speaking with the chief, it is not against the law to be intoxicated. It's against the law to be intoxicated and do something, for example, driving. So there's an element of proof that you need when someone is intoxicated. So you just can't see someone walk on the side of the road, suspect they're intoxicated, and arrest them. That was decriminalized in the 70s. That's why you don't have laws like urinating disorderly, swearing disorderly, fighting disorderly. It's disorderly conduct. The word that is most valuable in that description is tumultuous behavior. Tumultuous behavior in these disorderly conduct laws means disruptive, troubled, disorderly, turbulent behavior. To to go back and maybe compare this, we all watched episodes of Mayberry when we were much younger, and Otis, the drunk, was brought in for drunken, not disorderly, just drunk. So we, you know, I know we're all laughing about that, but that's really, that would be a step backwards if the town did that. I spoke to Mr. Dentler, who is prior law enforcement. He knew what he was talking about. And I think he left with the explanation that I gave him that we had it. There was a specific incident that I'm not going to rehash because I wasn't there. But maybe the incident could have turned out differently, maybe not. It involved a student that there was an issue. So that person, just if we had, what it came down to is if we had a different law, would it have helped that situation? And the answer was no. It was, for whatever reason, this person was not charged with disorderly conduct for whatever reason. But, so the chief and I talked about it. I'm 100% behind the police department. They know how to enforce this law, and they do it very frequently. So I am comfortable that we will keep the town ordinance mirroring the state law for disorderly conduct, and it's a broad-based law, and it's used by law enforcement throughout the state in a very effective way.
It's also the discretion of the police officer on the beat. Right?
There's a lot of, well, there's discretion for any law. You
Right.
know, but
I mean, the hands-on police officer that's at the scene.
Absolutely.
It's his discretion
That's right.
to interpolate if it's tumultuous behavior or some other category of that disorderly conduct.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I just have a quick question on the violation schedule. So I know the law is disorderly conduct, but if there are different, it looks like to me there are different levels of whatever that behavior is. So if they're disturbing the peace under 4636, that's $500. If they're sleeping in public on the bench, then it's $100. Is that an accurate interpretation of this schedule, or?
It is. You know, obviously, when someone's arrested for disorderly conduct, they go before a judge, and everything is weighed. It's a misdemeanor.
So the arrest is disorderly conduct.
Disorderly conduct.
And then as
the facts of the case would then be presented, and then a judge would decide what the appropriate fine is.
So I just want to make sure your comments that the state law and our law mirrors each other, that it's all falls under disorderly conduct, doesn't mean that there are not certain levels of offenses. I mean, some are worse than others, I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say this, I had 30-plus years in law enforcement. We all know that. So I've never seen a law used more and used more effectively than disorderly conduct. And I don't remember the last time, in my experience, that a police officer lost a case like something like that. It's a very effective law, and the town of Narragansett uses it often.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody wishing to speak on this? Mr. Dentler. There's no action other than discussion.
Jeff Dentler, Village of Point Judith. My observations and comments are not for any disrespect or insulting anyone, other than what Stanley just said about the ad hoc committee being unqualified to do anything. I think I'm qualified on this one. I'm looking for accountability, either in action or inaction. Following the town council meeting, the 5-0 decision on to look at this ordinance, and I met with the town manager and councilperson Lawler, it was pointed out to me about this statute in which it's under criminal offense chapter 11-45 disorderly conduct, and then under disorderly conduct there is a clause that says engages in tumultuous behavior. If you go to Black's Law's dictionary and look up the word tumultuous, it is totally undefined. There is no strict definition of tumultuous whatsoever. What's in Black's Law's dictionary for tumultuous, it has to have accompanying words. The words are like tumultuous petitioning, tumultuous assembly of 3 or more, tumultuous breach of peace. Even in our meeting, it was defined that tumultuous is not defined. It's a catch-all clause. Okay? If it's a catch-all clause, a person who walks onto your property, climbs a tree, with every intent to gain access to your house, but was not tumultuous, but was drunk, declared drunk by the on-present officers. No offense, drive her home. So what is tumultuous behavior then? Under this ordinance, I have no clue. If I go to your house, climb your tree, and I don't do anything tumultuous, I shouldn't be arrested. Is that what we want? It was clearly stated in the library conversation that we have over 8,000 students in Narragansett renting. That's the first time anyone has put a number on how many student rentals we have. Back to this law and this ordinance. How many times has Stanley come up and said, the issue is drinking and drunk, but if they're not tumultuous, they cannot be committing any offense. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else wishing to speak? Stanley?
I want to thank you for making a step forward here to make the law better so we can arrest people who violate space, noise, whatever. But I'd just like to add, is there some way you need to increase the fines? $500, $100, $500, $1,000 doesn't mean anything to these kids. Doesn't mean anything. They spend $1,000 like this, they don't care. Yes, we need the law changed so we can make the arrest, but it will not have the hammer, it will not have the effect unless you say it's $1,000. And if that doesn't work, we'll go to $2,000. I don't know where we stop. But the state, where they do $500, they just want to, they don't want to hurt everybody's feelings, so we just give them $500, send them home, send the drunk home, $500. No, in Narragansett, let's start off with $1,000, and if we can't make it a fine, let's go to cost recovery. If you remember, Chief Hoxie was attempting to go to cost recovery. And I say, that house with a sticker, if it's got four kids in that house, cost recovery is $1,000 each, $4,000 cost recovery for the police going to that facility. I thought we paid the emergency squad to go and pick up people too, I thought. You know, if we have to go to these houses, wherever they are, each student or person in that house, renting, owner, if it's an owner, got to pay $1,000 for having a party out and back and disturbing the peace. I don't care if it's a student or not. We need cost recovery if we can't get a fine, but we need to get a fine of $1,000. I say, make it $1,000 to start, and let's see where we are. Let's get some. We need to get something in this to make it worthwhile. We got to get it success. Success. We haven't had success with all these rules and regulations and parking. None of it's worked. But what would work is a significant amount of money. That may, and what is significant, I don't know. For me, it's 1,000, maybe 2. But let's start with 1,000.
Thank you, Stanley. I'm going to ask Matt to make a motion to continue the meeting.
Move to continue the meeting to 11:15 in accordance with our
Rules and regulations.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Anybody else wishing to speak on the motion?
Jim, were you done? Did you have something else to say?
We're continuing this, correct? No, I'm sorry, we're continuing
We were
the
just
meeting.
discussing.
It was
yeah.
just a discussion item, but I thought you had something else to say.
I must have heat stroke, but no, I just want to bring up one point. I respect Mr. Dentler's opinion, but it's also a rule of law. So you can be, the solicitor gave me this quote, I can't take this one, but I'll remember it. You can be drunk and orderly, or you can be sober and disorderly. So it's really a rule of law. And as far as what Stanley's saying, I've never seen a fine as a deterrent anywhere. I mean, someone breaks the law, the last thing they're thinking about is the fine. But also, the definition of misdemeanor versus felony is related to the fine. So we're governed by, you can't have a $5,000 fine on a misdemeanor. It's impossible. So I am satisfied with this. There is discussion with the chief on, there was Obviously, there was an incident that the resident thought should have been taken to a different level, and, you know, we talked to the chief about it. But I am 100% confident this town knows how to enforce these two laws.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? There's no action taken, it was a discussion. Any more discussion? No? Okay, moving on to 23. Motion to schedule a workshop after the summer event season to discuss future plans for all the facilities available for rent. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that motion.
I'll second it.
The scheduled date is Monday, Labor Day is a holiday, so it would be Tuesday, September 4th at 6:30. As you remember, the council had given direction to the manager to give us a comprehensive report on the facilities. He did that. It was quite a lengthy report. He reviewed it with us, and now Mike Moretti is asking for a workshop so we can dissect it and maybe have a more intimate conversation about is there any desire to do anything with the facilities. So he would like it scheduled for September 4th at 6:30. All those in favor of the schedule?
The one thing is, though, in terms of what are we looking for here? Because I was pretty comfortable with it. I don't have a lot of things I want to.
Yeah. So I mean, I just was, if nothing comes of it, nothing comes of it. I think I was curious to see if there were, and it was very comprehensive about how things are done now, and I was just specifically looking for potential enhancements to the way these things are done. So that could include anything related to any one of those facilities individually or all of them together. I just was curious if the town manager and others from the public had just general ideas moving forward. So it could come out that there's nothing. I don't mean to waste people's time, but I just think there could be some enhancements to the revenue generating facilities that are using
And how
that.
they're organized or functioned, or how they're managed. I mean, who knows?
So that's the rental, because the one thing that I felt people have been asking about, specifically the Historical Society, is a home for the Historical Society, which I threw into that conversation, and I still think we should, that to me is something I think we should really think about. But in terms of the facilities and the rentals, there's not a lot that I would alter on.
Yeah, and I think there's some positions like we talked about Donna's position at the towers and Daisy's position in the town. So I think there's more discussion to look at the facilities to see if we holistically agree or disagree with the way things are running.
Well, since we're, 2 of the 3 buildings are connected with the Parks and Rec, and they have a meeting coming up, we usually have a workshop with them discussing what happened and the events of.
Those are going to be 2 big meetings. The beach takes, that's September 17th. This, I think, would be a lot. We're talking about 4 facilities. We can't do that in the beach policies and revenue, I think.
Well, I don't know. I think we might be able to, just kind of, what do you think?
I really don't. Listen. There is a lot. I mean, we're here again now. It's like almost 11.
I wouldn't put those together.
So and I don't mean to waste people's time. If you want to separate and grade, if you want to have something else, my idea was just to kind of take it one step further and then maybe put it to bed. Or
all right. So let's just take a vote on it. September 4th at 6:30. All those in favor of having a workshop?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
4-1, motion passes. That's September 4th at 6:30. Number 24, a motion to amend the rules for commissions, committee, and board appointments by the addition of committee members' attendance records for all planning and zoning reappointments and motions. Do I have a motion?
Move that motion.
Second it.
Mike, this is yours about the attendance being included so we can see as we're having our meetings.
So very simply, we had a couple meetings ago, there was a question on attendance for planning and zoning board members. I think, again, I keep going back to those 2 boards because they're, I would think, 2 of the most important boards in town. I think, and I know everyone can go look to find out what the attendance is. I think it's a matter of courtesy to supply that with the record so that when people come to the meeting, they'll see when we propose that somebody gets reappointed, they can actually look and see, oh, he was or she was there 100%, or they missed 50% of the meetings. That's basically what it is. So.
Any more discussion? Anybody from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, motion passes. Number 25, a motion to discuss and adopt rules and procedures for the Narragansett Town Council meetings. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
So first I want to thank Ann because you were really helpful. I have served on the council for 10 wonderful years. And in that time of service, we really realized through more this term than ever before that a lot of what has been the practice for decades in the town of Narragansett in government is not really written down anywhere. And so I took some time and reviewed Jamestown, Westerly, South Kingston, and North Kingston, and used what we do in Narragansett to devise and help me with some of the executive wording in the rules and procedures. But it is a clear document that explains not only to the council, but to the residents about what the agenda is in a meeting, what you should do in each part of the meeting. And I did receive a correspondence from Mrs. Garceau to ask if we could add correspondence in it. But in the rules and regulations of the meetings, it's up for discussion. I did send it out to some of the past presidents for feedback. One of the things I wanted to ask Mark about was on number 8 and about solicitor. So I know serving on a council, looking at the other communities, they all go through the town manager to talk to the solicitor. And I know this council, we've all reached out on our own to talk to you. And I know both ways can work. So that was one that I was kind of like, it doesn't really matter. It depends what the council's pleasure is. So there were a couple little tweaks in these rules and procedures that, you know, I wasn't sure how you felt about that one either before the council reviewed it. But as a solicitor, just to keep it straight and understand it, which is a better way to conduct business. That was the one that stuck out.
Well, my experience in the last 9 months has been that many of the things are vetted through the town manager, but I get calls or inquiries from, I think I've gotten inquiries from each town council member. I haven't had the experience where any single council member has contacted me on a consistent basis, nor has any council member been burdensome. So I think if I were getting constant requests from members of the town council independently, I might feel differently. But given my experience in the last 9 months, my contact directly with the council members has been fairly limited, and practically most of the stuff is filtered through the town manager. So as a practical matter, it's working, I think, in the fashion where most stuff is vetted through the town manager, but in those cases where somebody wants to bounce something off me, they contact me directly, and I personally don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, that was my thought after I wrote them, and was just kind of reading other communities surrounding us. They do it that way, but we have, and I know Matt and I, over the years, you know, if you want to contact the solicitor, you pretty much do. So I would, you know, be open to looking at keeping it that way. This says it goes through the town manager, but if Jill or Patrick or any of us want to make a call to Mark, I don't know that we have to, you know, go through the manager to do that. So that was one thing when I reviewed them, as I read them again, I was like, oh, that probably could be modified. And I wasn't sure about the correspondent piece. People that come to the meetings can speak and they can see the agenda, but some of the communities have an opportunity. If you don't come, they can correspond. We all get that. But is there a part on the agenda that we want to put that on? And I wasn't sure about that part either.
It's funny, I received the same phone call from Mrs. Garceau today, and I qualified that because I wasn't quite sure if she was referring anytime someone comes up to us at Stop and Shop and makes a conversation, do she want us to communicate that? But what I came down to is what she's saying is that she has gotten on in her years and finds it very hard to come to council, although I'm sure she's watching tonight. Hi, Joan. But she asked that at open forum, if she has a question, that she be able to have it read. So I don't know if that would be possible. I don't know, we have to probably potentially have limits on it. But there are a lot of people we know. There's a fan base out there that watches us every other Monday.
So somebody would read her question?
Yeah, maybe Ann. She could submit it to the town clerk. and a question could be read.
Right.
If she raises a good point, there are people that want to be here that can't, that have concerns or questions to ask. And, we don't want to make it so people are dialing us in from Florida on their vacation, but at some point, it does make sense that if someone can't attend the meeting because of their illnesses.
Typically, they write it up, and then they can give it to someone, and then that person reads on their behalf at public comment. That's kind of the nice way to handle that, typically.
Yeah,
I've seen that happen many times, so has Susan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to that. So, that's something we could look at adding a commentary at some point. And then the legal thing, I think if we amend that and sort of say, any council member shall, have the authority to contact the solicitor. Was there anything else in the rules and procedures? I mean, I laid out the meetings, and Ann and I actually listed the 10 reasons when you go into executive. A lot of people don't understand how that works, and I think it's important not only if we adopt these with those 2 amendments that we hang it on the website, so because many people have been very, they're confused in how it works and the 3 minutes, and I think it's important.
Executive session is not for controversial issues. It's for issues where you're trying to protect the public and get a better or protect a particular individual, like a personnel decision. So that's one of the big misconceptions.
Yeah.
Madam President?
Yeah.
You have my permission to contact Mr. Davis anytime you want, as often as you want.
Yeah.
You can call
Well,
me.
I think we probably all do that. That's why
anytime you
when
want.
again, the Roberts rules and the way the other communities do things, you take what we've done over the last few decades, and then, you mix it in and you say, well, we pretty much this term anyway have all, I think, a free-for-all calling the solicitor on a number of times. So, Stanley?
I read a little through, and it said that, I guess you, the town manager, and the lawyer make the agenda. Does that mean that the others can't put stuff in the agenda at their discretion?
Oh, that's a great question. No, that all the council are elected, and they submit any agenda items, through the process.
So you don't screen it, it goes in as they say?
No, that's right. So I don't know if that's in there, but that's a good point. I don't know if it reflects that. Did you not feel like it said that?
I didn't see that. I didn't
So-
read it. I didn't read it in depth, though. I just
No, but
happened to
that's
pick that
good
out of
because-
there. That was one thing I picked out. And
Yeah. So Stanley, yes, everybody on the council can submit an agenda item, and it goes in. So again, tonight, I mean, it can come back next, on the 20th, and I
Yeah.
can tweak some of the things we talked about, the legal, the correspondence, and certainly that. I think it does say it, now that I'm thinking. I
it
think
probably does.
it
I didn't read. I
think
didn't read it
does.
thoroughly.
Actually,
I
think
admit that I didn't read it in detail. I
does.
just happened
It
to.
says any member.
It
It
says,
does in
yeah, I
there,
did put it
okay.
in.
Yeah, so essentially, you'll probably remove 7, and then you'll...
8. I'll modify 8, and I'll keep 7 in, which says every council member has an opportunity, and I'll put in the correspondent, and I'll come back for a vote on the 20th if you've all looked it over and you feel comfortable with
I'm
it.
fine
I
with
just
it.
got
Jim?
one more question.
Go ahead.
One more question. On the open forum, I noticed there's very few people normally, very few people on open forum. I think 5 minutes would not be an overextension. You have 3, 4, 5 people, 5 minutes, that's half an hour. It's not so bad. I think we ought to extend the open forum from 3 to 5 minutes, because I find that when you have less time to speak, you blurt it out and scream, and it doesn't really look good.
Just so you know, Stanley, the president can give authority to extend
Well, that's
the time.
the other
It's in
issue.
there.
That's
Thank you.
another issue. I wanted
Thank
that.
you. Speaking of time.
Yeah, well, that's what I was
Okay.
almost arguing
So,
about.
no.
As I said, maybe we should not give anybody the ability to go beyond the 5 minutes, because you may choose somebody you like to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question for Jim. Jim, if I fall asleep, am I going to get arrested for disorderly conduct?
Listen, okay, so I'm
Yes.
going to ask, for the sake of time, to call for a vote to approve, to take out 8, to add correspondent, and to keep 3 minutes. All those in favor of the rules and regulations? Aye. 5-0. So I'll send those amendments to you, to the clerk, okay? And then we can post them. Thank you. We are moving on to 26. A motion to appoint and reappoint 2 individuals to the Galilee Advisory for a 2-year term to expire May 31st, 2020, and 4 individuals for a 1-year term to expire on May 31st, 2019. To appoint
So I'll move to appoint Ray DeRosa, Harvey Cataldo, John Thompson, and Drew McGee for, did I say appoint?
Yeah.
We have to reappoint
Yeah.
Ray DeRosa, Harvey Cataldo, John Thompson, and Drew McGee for one-year terms.
I'll second that.
Is that a full billet?
You want to do, and then you're going to do the
One
new
bid.
Do that and then
All
the
right.
new ones, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so that's 5-0, motion passes, and
Move to appoint
Jerry.
Richard Watlett and Jerry Sahajian to the two-year terms.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 27, a motion to appoint or reappoint four individuals to the Harbor Management Commission to a 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2021, and one individual to a 1-year term to expire on June 30th, 2019. To reappoint Jennings, go ahead.
I move to reappoint John Jennings, Ray Morocco, Tom Hoxie, and Brian Couture for the 3-year terms.
I'll second that.
Good.
And then, all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. And then Joe Hart,
And then I move to appoint Joe Hart as the alternate member for one-year term.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 28, a motion to appoint or reappoint an individual to the Housing Authority for 5-year term to expire on April 30th, 2023, to appoint Joe Robenheimer. Anybody?
There's a lot of applications, but
Yeah, I'd move that motion.
I'll second
whoever
that.
you guys, I don't have a,
The only thing is there a rule in effect that you can't, there's a note on the bottom of the
No, you can be
application?
on two. You
You can be on two?
That's,
Yes, you can be on, she's asking if she
Can you
can
be
on a
on two
second board.
committees? Because the application that you provided, I think that's unclear that you can be on two committees.
Well, we have many members that are
I
on
know,
boards and
we've had
commissions on
this, so
too.
for 2 years, I've asked the same question.
Yeah.
So it's not clear. I think it needs to become
I think it needs to
clearer.
become
I don't
clearer.
care about tradition. I want to see it written down.
I agree.
And I especially would, and I know it's not for this, but if you're on the planning and zoning board, not sure you have time to focus on another committee effectively. So that's just my opinion, but.
Right.
Well, he's on the tax review board.
Yeah, he's on two, but again, we have many volunteers in this town that are on two boards, you guys, we do. So
Right, but just
for
two wrongs don't
tonight-
make a right.
Tonight, there is
I agree
an
with Matt.
appointment, so I don't know if you have put Joe Robenheimer
there's
up.
two, they were not allowed to do dual office holding, but there's an exception if we use our discretion. So the exception swallows the rule.
Right.
That's how this works. So I should smile when I say that because I feel like I'm looking a little grumpy. So that's what Mike's articulating. So, I don't know whose application came in first here. I don't, it's late.
Well, there's one name up.
You got a name up, yeah,
Yeah, we
I'm
had
fine
Joe
with that, but.
Robenheimer's up, use it, and I'm going to
Is there-
second it. All
Is there
those in-
discussion for other people, I guess?
Is
Is
there
there
anybody have
somebody
another
else?
name?
It's not that I have another name, it's just I agree with Mike's statement is that if somebody's serving on one board already, and we have two other people, the same thing, the next two applicants for other two committees are already serving on other boards.
All those in favor?
Madam President, I think Mr. Robenheimer did say if you wanted him to leave the tax board, he would.
Okay. Thank you.
But now you're going to have to find somebody.
Well,
for
and we're
that
not
board.
sure that he has to leave it, the tax board at this point. Okay, his name's up, there's a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is that 5 or 4?
Sure.
That's 5-0. Before we adjourn, I do want to review the seats that are open on the boards and commissions. We have 5 seats open on the tower due to terms that are up for them. So there are 5 seats on the Towers Committee. There are 2 on the Finance Committee. There are 5 open seats on the Historic Cemetery. There are 2 alternate spots on the Harbor Commission. There are 2 vacancies on the Juvenile Hearing Board, and there are 2 vacancies as alternates for the Board of Canvassers. We need 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. So we do have opens. If people at home are interested, please fill out an application. We'd appreciate people stepping forward for those open seats. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.